Any questions from the previous class if you have? So in the last class we were talking about proof of stake, which is an alternative approach to design blockchain technology. Let's complete this topic of IT and computer, then we will discuss topics of biotechnology and health. So this facial recognition system, not a frankly new idea as such. Facial recognition is a part of so many things for so many years. But this topic is in news because at lot of airports, for example, Delhi airport maybe, you have now this facial recognition system by an app developed by Ministry of Civil Aviation. So there is an app called Digi Yatra Foundation, Digi Yatra Central Ecosystem, where आप जो भी आपने travel plan details से पहले यहाँ पे upload कर दो, ticket वगैरह upload कर दो, picture upload कर दो. You do not have to go and stand in queue, because recently there was a lot of news that crowd at Delhi airports, they are not properly being managed. So this can be a very good solution, that hassle-free check-in without standing in queue for very long. So just a small topic, but facial recognition technology frankly is not a new thing. Facial recognition technology can be in fact considered an aspect of artificial intelligence if you think about it, that your face and all of its feature, for example, when you are unlocking your phone with the help of facial recognition technology, then that is also an aspect of artificial intelligence. The only thing is that once you start using something for very long, then you forget that it is AI. So facial recognition in general, it is one of the example of artificial intelligence. There are some concerns of course associated with this technology, but I think those concerns are more important for mains examination. Fundamentally the concern is with respect to privacy, that that data can be used for in general surveillance. You are basically voluntarily giving your data, your facial data, which can be used for other purposes also. Extended reality is a term which means lot of things together. It means augmented reality, virtual reality, or mixed reality. So let me briefly explain the meaning of all these three things. Augmented reality, as the name suggests, that we are augmenting our reality. Augment matlab enhancing. For example, in the previous classes, or in this case I am showing you this PDF. In this PDF all the topics which are given, I am showing it to you. But let's, for example, if I can create a digital image, but a three-dimensional digital image in front of me, that if I have to show something, if I have to, let's say for example, demonstrate a particular orbit, I showed you an animation of an orbit or pictures of an orbit with the help of perhaps a YouTube video or with the help of a picture. But what if I could show you for example a 3D animation using this space here? So I am basically enhancing reality. We are very much part of this reality, and I am enhancing this reality with the help of digital animations, 3D digital animations. So this is called augmented reality. You are very much part of the reality. You are aware about what is happening all around you, and then you are using digital models to enhance your experiences. Compared to that, the virtual reality hai, that is very different. Virtual reality often requires some sort of headset, and ye jo headset hai, by using this headset, by using some app, now you are no longer part of this reality. You are not aware about what is happening in your surrounding. You are part of some virtual world, and your actions have consequences in that virtual world. It became very popular with video games. A lot of video games were based on virtual reality games. So by wearing a goggle, you are now part of some simulation, and whatever your actions are, those actions have consequences into that virtual reality genre. But nonetheless, it does not have to be just, it does not have to be only for virtual reality. If you think about it, it can have applications in many areas. For example, I can go into a simulation, and if I let's say for example, I am doing my MBBS, and as part of my training in a virtual simulation, I am performing a surgery. So my actions, my hand movements, they have consequences into a virtual simulation. So it can be, for example, I can practice I can own my skills into a virtual simulation. So in that sense, VR can have applications into many areas. We can be part of a virtual reality simulation classroom. For example, let's say all of you are right now physically present here. What if we have, all of us have really good internet connection, and what if we have a virtual classroom that all of you are sitting at your home wearing these goggles, and Vision IAS has created a virtual classroom. All of you are now present in virtual classroom. In that virtual reality, all of you are sitting together. I am also there, but I am taking this class physically from my home, and all of us can interact in the same way like how we are doing right now. So that will be an example of virtual reality. So it can have applications into many areas, not necessarily, although it became very popular because of video games. जो mixed reality का concept है, it has both elements of augmented and virtual reality, that you have some awareness about your presence. You are part of a simulation, but at the same time you are not completely absent from the presence. Also, it can also mean one more thing, that virtual reality often have that your actions have only consequences into virtual world. But in mixed reality, those consequences can also be felt into real world. Jaise, many video game companies, again, it's becoming very popular for video game. Many video game companies are actually using this concept of mixed reality, that apart from this goggle where you are part of some virtual simulation, apart from that, they are also working on some special fabrics. For example, let's say if you have been killed into a virtual reality game, then of course you will not be killed into real world, but nonetheless you will feel perhaps some sort of pain. Or if somebody has punched you really hard, then you are going to feel some pain even into physical world with the help of this special fabric. So your consequences are no longer only limited to the virtual world, you also will have some physical world experiences. So such type of reality where you have both aspects of augmented and virtual reality, we can call it mixed reality. Now why this topic is in news? Because जो Facebook की जो parent company है Meta, so Facebook's parent company Meta and Ministry of Electronics Information Technology, they have collaborated that जो भी ये virtual reality AR और in general extended reality वाले जो भी startups हैं, let's support them. And Meta also has lot of incentive in investing that, because Meta as of now is betting huge amount of resources on this entire concept of virtual reality. So Meta का जो पूरा focus है to create a metaverse. So metaverse जो है, that has lot of aspect of this virtual reality. तो अभी तक metaverse क्या था? Metaverse simply is we are talking about virtual simulation. अभी तक क्या था कि that virtual simulation was only for video games, but now perhaps, as I told you, this virtual simulation can be for classroom. That Meta has, let's say for example, has invested a lot into virtual classroom. अब मान लो Vision IAS as an organization जो है, Vision IAS as an organization को लगता है कि we do not have expertise or we do not have, let's say for example, resources. So we have subscribed to Meta services. That हमने Meta से हमने एक deal करा है that we are going to use your virtual classroom for all of the students and for all of the faculty members. So as of now, Facebook is betting a huge amount of their resources on this entire concept of metaverse, that things are going to become virtual in future. अभी तक तो ऐसा है कि they are frankly not doing so well. From the moment they started investing huge amount of resources into this entire concept, their stock price has continuously declined, and metaverse as of now, very few people are using it, very few people. We can count them on finger. But the entire idea is that gradually more and more people will start accepting virtual reality simulations, and lot of things will happen in simulation only. So for example, right now we go and buy things on Amazon, or we buy grocery from particular app, big basket se aapne kharid liya. So in virtual reality you can actually, now that will be an example of extended reality, that there is a virtual shop. In this simulation you can actually go and buy things into this virtual shop, like although you are part of your home only, but you can feel that you are buying thing, and at the same time once you make the payment into this virtual world, after some time those fruits and vegetables actually will be delivered at your doorstep. So without going out as such, you can feel that you are actually buying fruits and vegetables. So that will be again another example of extended reality, that we are talking about both virtual reality and augmented reality working together. But again I will repeat, जो Facebook का पूरा plan था, जो उनका लग रहा, उनका जो vision था, that is not frankly working that well as of now. रियल लाइफ एग्जाम्पल हो सकता है, अगर आप बहुत बार टेक स्टार्टअप्स वगैरह है, जो टेक कॉन्फ्रेंसेज होंगे, तो वहाँ पे आपको ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी का एग्जाम्पल मिल जाएगा. बट इन आवर डे टू डे लाइफ, सॉरी, हाँ, पोकेमॉन गो इज अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल. हाँ, सीरियसली पोकेमॉन गो इज अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी. जो पोकेमॉन गो पूरा गेम है, दैट इज अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी. बट इन जनरल आप टेक कॉन्फ्रेंसेज में जाओ, आप ऐसे जाओ, तो यूल हैव दिस लॉट ऑफ मॉडल्स क्रिएटेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ डिजिटल images, 3D images, right? Sorry, can you हाँ बिल्कुल, हाँ, that will be, that is a very good example of augmented reality. So what? Even if you are seeing on a TV, so what? So what he's saying is that, for example, right now जो मैच का एनालिसिस होता है, क्रिकेट मैच आप देखते हो, that बॉलर का मूवमेंट, बहुत सारी चीज़ें जो है, with the help of lot of sensors, now we can come to lot of conclusion, type of movement, delivery, everything you can actually have very good idea about it. And yes, that will be an actually example of augmented reality. तो आप टीवी पे देख रहे हो, बट वो तो फाइनली सेंसर्स लगा रखे हैं, कैमरास लगा रखे हैं, टूल्स हैं हमारे पास ऐसे जो एनालिसिस करने में सक्सेसफुल है. ठीक है, तो यस, वी कैन एक्चुअली, दैट विल बी अ गुड एग्जांपल ऑफ ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी. In augmented reality, you do not have to wear any glasses or something like that. You are very much part of your reality. You are very much aware about your reality. Compared to that, in virtual reality, you have frankly no awareness about your physical reality, and you are only part of some virtual simulation. And often you will require some type of special headsets or glasses to be part of such type of virtual reality. बट पत्थर, वो फिजिकल पत्थर हवा में उड़ रहे होंगे या डिजिटल उड़ रहे होंगे? अच्छा, इट विल बी एन एग्जांपल ऑफ ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी. ओके, आई एक्चुअली, सो ही व्हाट ही इज सेइंग इज दैट सऊदी अरेबिया का एक पूरा प्लान है, एक नया पूरा सिटी बनाने का, विल बहुत ज़्यादा जो फोकस होगा ऑगमेंटेड रियलिटी पे होगा. Extended reality is a concept which include all of these things. Extended reality is a term which is going to include all of those things. Augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality. Because we are, after all, we are talking about various aspects of reality, right? So that is why the word is extended reality, which will include all of it. But fundamentally, there will be differences between AR and VR. आप कुछ पूछ रहे? नहीं, मिक्स्ड रियलिटी एक वेन डायग्राम बस सिर्फ ये बनेगा कि जो मिक्स्ड रियलिटी होगा उसके दोनों के एस्पेक्ट्स होंगे. इफ आई हैव टू मेक अ वेन डायग्राम, this will be AR, this will be VR, this will be perhaps mixed reality, which will have aspects from both augmented and virtual reality. So key similarities and differences ये है. AR VR में similarities तो खैर बहुत कम है. In augmented reality, you are part of reality. You are very much aware about what is all around you. But with the help of digital models, you are enhancing your visual experience. So that will be an example of augmented reality. In virtual reality, in the contrast, you are not at all part of your physical reality. You are wearing some glasses, and with the help of those glasses, with the help of some computer programs, now you are part of some entirely different virtual simulation. And those virtual simulation, now your actions or whatever actions, body actions, you are playing perhaps some video game or whatever, then your actions have consequences into that virtual world, not exactly into this reality which you are part of. जो mixed reality है, that has aspects of both AR and VR, that you have some awareness or your actions have consequences in virtual simulation, but your actions have consequences even into real world. फिर से बोला, सॉरी, व्हाट आर बिल्कुल बिल्कुल डेफिनेटली मिक्स्ड रियलिटी डज रिक्वायर स्पेशल गैजेट्स. जैसे एक जो मैंने सिंपल सा एग्जांपल दिया आपको, बहुत सिंपलेस्ट एग्जांपल है कि वीडियो गेम कंपनीज इन्वेस्टिंग इनटू सम स्पेशल टेक्सटाइल that in a virtual reality game, if you have been punched, then you are going to feel pain also in real world. So yes, it will require special gears, special mechanisms to invest into. हाँ, so ये हमेशा होगा. Radio frequency identification, this has applications into many areas. RFID, you need to understand differences between all of these three things. All of them are example of use of radio wave. And with the help of radio wave, we are trying to exchange information between two devices. But all of them have different applications and all of them have different mechanism that what type of communication is going to happen. So radio frequency identification technology here, that will often have a tag and it will have a RFID reader. That tag has encoded information and that RFID reader can read that information. But the beautiful thing about RFID technology is that it does not exactly require line of sight. इसका रेंज बहुत ज़्यादा है. जैसे आप मान लो आप एक शॉप में जाते हो, उसके पास बारकोड स्कैनर है, कोई भी आप प्रोडक्ट खरीद रहे हो, वहाँ पे एक बारकोड है. सो इट एक्चुअली हैज़ टू पुट, ये जो बारकोड स्कैनर है, इट हैज़ टू बी पुट ऑन दैट बारकोड, ओनली देन इट कैन स्कैन, अदरवाइज इट कैन नॉट. सो इट रिक्वायर्स अ लाइन ऑफ साइट. सेम इज ऑल्सो ट्रू फॉर QR code, by the way. That QR code requires a line of sight. Compared to barcode, which is horizontal, it only has information horizontally. जो QR code है, that has information both horizontally and vertically. A two-dimensional matrix that it has both length as well as breadth. So of course we can encode much more information into QR code versus barcode. So QR code can encode a lot of information. Because of that, it has much more utility. In fact, now since we are talking about augmented reality and virtual reality, now people are actually working on three-dimensional QR code. That let's use a 3D QR code as part of augmented reality, and that will have even much more information. And we can encode lot of data into a very small type of 3D QR code. So QR code requires line of sight. RFID does not require line of sight. इसका range भी ज़्यादा होगा. It has applications into many areas. For example, right now जो भी toll है, toll और फास्टैग जो आपका है, जो आपकी गाड़ियों पे भी जो फास्टैग लगा होता है, so you do not now have to make any payment to someone on toll. You simply, the money will be deducted from this, because this फास्टैग has actually information about your bank. जो भी कोई बैंक ने इशू करा होगा, and जो RFID reader है, that can actually read that encoded information with the help of RFID technology. It has applications into logistics also. Lot of big containers containing lot of goods from different areas, they have these RFID readers, because simply just by scanning this RFID reader, we can actually know that all the goods and all the containers which are passing from, let's say, one particular terminal point. So it has applications into many more areas, and it gives you a lot of flexibility because it does not actually require line of sight to know the encoded information in your RFID reader. Compared to that, quick response code जो है, that does require. However, QR code is much better than barcode, because while barcode is only horizontal, जो QR code है, that is both horizontal and vertical. And even it does require line of sight, but that line of sight does not have to perfectly orient. ये भी एक interesting चीज़ है. जो barcode है वो बिल्कुल horizontally जब तक orient नहीं होगा, तब तक वो read नहीं कर पाएगा. QR code, because the information is both a two-dimensional information, it does not require a perfect orientation. Just it has to be just above it, and it can find the correct information, whatever information is required. Actually, यहाँ पे PDF नहीं, I'm not very sure. ये PDF है नहीं. This is not normal PDF. This is some other app. Just ask IT team that. sorry, sorry, it only required 2 finger. Anyways, जो नियर फील्ड कम्युनिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी है, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट नियर फील्ड कम्युनिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी, इसका रेंज बहुत ही कम होगा. It will work perhaps up to few centimeter, 10 centimeter, 15 centimeter, not more than that. But if two devices are in contact very close to each other, then they can exchange even encoded information with each other. So lot of debit cards and credit cards, they are now NFC enabled, or even your smart card, for example, metro में जो हम use करते हैं. So lot of these things are example of near field communication technology, that two devices which are very close to each other, either touching or perhaps up to few centimeter, not more than 10-15 centimeter, and they can exchange encoded information. So that basically leads to very good application is hassle-free payment, that you do not actually have to punch your PIN or something like that. But there is of course a downside also, because if you lost your card, then it can be misused also. So that is of course a downside of this, but nonetheless it does lead to it does basically reduces the delay in payments and lot of other things. So all of them are example of exchanging information between devices with the help of radio wave, but all of them there are some differences. For example, this does not require line of sight, these two require line of sight. इसका जो स्पेशली जो रेंज है बहुत ही कम है, 1 centimeter to 10 centimeter, not more than that, 10-15 maximum. Even 15 will be at 15 centimeter, frankly it is not going to work properly. But जो QR code है, ये up to some distance also, depending upon how much information is encoded, and that information can be decoded also with the help of QR code. But जो best technology है, that is radio frequency identification technology, because it does not require line of sight. So रियल टाइम QR कोड तो बहुत सारी चीज़ों पे यूज़ कर सकते हैं ना. रियल टाइम ट्रैकिंग आपको किसी चीज़ का करना है, आपने जो भी GPS इनेबल, फॉर एग्जांपल आपका जो लोकेशन शेयरिंग है उसको आपने इनेबल कर रखा है. अब लोकेशन शेयरिंग यू आर ट्रैकिंग इट ऑन सर्टेन वेबसाइट, आपने उसको कोड कर रखा है इन अ QR कोड. सो द मोमेंट यू स्कैन अ QR कोड, यू नाउ आर पार्ट ऑफ परहैप्स अ लाइव ट्रैकिंग व्हीकल. जो व्हीकल का जो लाइव ट्रैकिंग है, दैट इज no, it can be. So for example, if I can design no real time tracking का मतलब यहाँ पे simply ये है that if I am, let's say for example, if I have a device, if let's say for example एक WhatsApp location पे WhatsApp location या किसी चीज़ का location है, किसी के पास GPS device है, and if I have to trace it, so I can, this live location can be part of, let's say for example, a website, and that website can easily be encoded with the help of QR code. So in this case, I'm not very sure in what context it is mentioned that it require a line of sight to scan. I'm not very sure that in what context this is given here, that no real time tracking. It can be. So real time information can be encoded in QR code. QR code generate करना बहुत आसान है, बहुत ही easy है. बहुत सारे तो free में QR code generation आपको provide कराएंगे. हाँ, QR के कोड के केस में रेडियो वेव्स इन्वॉल्व नहीं है. हाँ, दैट इज देयर. नो, बट एट द सेम टाइम इट कैन बी यूज्ड फॉर रियल लाइफ. रियल ट्रैकिंग का सिंपली मतलब ये था कि इफ आई एम, एक एग्जांपल की तरह मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि इफ लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल आई हैव टू ट्रेस अ पर्टिकुलर जीपीएस हमको अगर यूज करना है, नाउ आई कैन इनकोड दैट मैसेज इनटू अ क्यूआर कोड. आई कैन गो टू अ लिंक एंड ऑन दैट लिंक लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल अ डिवाइस इज बीइंग ट्रेस्ड. सो इन दैट सेंस हम बोल सकते हैं कि हम लाइव ट्रैकिंग के लिए हम यूज कर सकते हैं. So that was just a very specific example of that. Not necessarily, नहीं ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. RFID का हम सबसेट क्यों बोलेंगे? Because जो नियर फील्ड कम्युनिकेशन टेक्नोलॉजी है वहाँ पे डिवाइसेस का क्लोज होना बहुत ज़रूरी है. So I cannot exactly say that it is subset of RFID. RFID, it does use radio wave to maintain communication channel, but I cannot actually say that it is subset of RFID. अब इस हिसाब से फॉर एग्जांपल इस हिसाब से आप ऐसे देखो तो जो हम रिमोट यूज़ करते हैं टीवी ऑन करने के लिए, दैट इज ऑल्सो यूजिंग अ रेडियो वेव. सो जस्ट बिकॉज वी आर, हाँ, इंफ्रारेड लाइट यूज करते हैं, बट वी आर यूजिंग अ टाइप ऑफ इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक वेव. वी कैन ऑल्सो यूज इन रिमोट्स, वी कैन ऑल्सो यूज रेडियो वेव. मतलब ऐसा कुछ नहीं कि हम रेडियो वेव यूज नहीं कर सकते. द पॉइंट इज दैट जस्ट बिकॉज वी आर यूजिंग एन इलेक्ट्रोमैग्नेटिक वेव और रेडियो वेव डज नॉट मीन दैट all the underlying aspects are exactly same, right? So there will be nuances to both of these technologies, and those nuances are going to differ. This was a plan envisaged by Nandan Nilekani, India Stack. लास्ट क्लास में हमने एक डिस्कस किया था जो डेटा एम्पावरमेंट प्रोटेक्शन आर्किटेक्चर था, डेपा. So the goal of India Stack is that let's create a repository, digital repository, because as of now there are a lot of government applications which are available online. आपका जैसे UIDA, of course UIDA has all this Aadhaar database, और CoWIN platform where you have all this vaccine आप आराम से कर सकते हो. So there are so many government programs. You have DigiLocker perhaps, which is again a very famous government program. So एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट होता है जिसको हम बोलते हैं APIs, एप्लीकेशन जो एप्स जो है हाउ दे कैन इंटरैक्ट विथ ईच अदर. जैसे एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लो, आपको कहीं पे लॉगिन करना हो तो लॉगिन करने के लिए आप बहुत बार गूगल अपने क्रेडेंशियल्स को यूज कर लेते हो कि लॉग इन थ्रू विद द हेल्प ऑफ गूगल. सो गूगल इज ऑफ कोर्स नॉट गोइंग टू शेयर ऑल ऑफ योर डेटा फॉर लॉग इन. लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल आपने पर्टिकुलर वेबसाइट पे पहली बार प्रोफाइल बनाना है. So Google is of course not going to share all of that data, but whatever required data is, that these two apps can communicate with each other. Let's say if I have make my trip पे मुझे कुछ अपना एक plan करना है, I have to log in there. So Google is not going to share all of my data with make my trip, but whatever required information is my name, email ID, phone number, so that I can receive directly messages from make my trip. That Google can of course do. So API इसका जो पूरा focus ये है that it can actually help you in जो भी payment different apps and they can communicate with each other. The concept of India Stack is that let's make a repository, जितने भी digital हमारे initiatives हैं, let's make a repository of that, because this will facilitate all of the government agencies, and in fact if government wants perhaps some other stakeholders also, that you can design your product based on that. जैसे बहुत बार आजकल जो बैंक्स हैं दे हैव दिस इंटीग्रेशन UIDA डेटाबेस दैट KYC करने के लिए आपको कहीं पे जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. आपको बस आधार डेटा, आप आधार यूज़ करो, आपके मोबाइल नंबर पे जो भी आपका आधार का रजिस्टर्ड नंबर है OTP आ जाएगा और वहाँ से आप अपना KYC करा लोगे. तो KYC आपको फिजिकली कहीं पे KYC कराने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. सो दैट विल बी अ वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल ऑफ हाउ गवर्नमेंट सर्विसेज कैन बी यूज्ड बाई अदर स्टेक होल्डर्स ऑल्सो. So let's make a repository of all of those things at one place, and so that एक तो सबसे पहला benefit क्या होगा कि if anybody wants to use this repository, they can find it at one place, and overall it is going to further enhance जो पूरा हमारा concept of digital economy है. So with this idea, India Stack was envisaged, and India Stack as of now frankly is working really well. As of now it includes APIs of Aadhaar, UPI, CoWIN, DigiLocker, Arogya, Sanjeevani, Umang, Diksha. All of these are different government schemes, government portals, and India Stack involves APIs of all of that. So you can have, with the help of, you can have communication between applications, and all of these government applications are part of India Stack. So आप simply एक simple जाके search भी कर सकते हो. I'm very sure. So the idea here is, let's say for example, if I go to what type of data it has. So it is again based on this entire concept of data empowerment protection architecture, that users का जो data है वो हमको protect करके रखना है. But nonetheless, using this India Stack, any bank, any stock company, any insurance company, they can develop their product and they can find all the repository, जो भी knowledge चाहिए, जो भी उनको interface चाहिए, they can use the India Stack for it. So this was envisaged by Nandan Nilekani, and government actually did agree to that, and as of now it is part of, government is working on it, and government is trying to integrate more and more things on it. So अभी जैसे National Payment Corporation India UPI जो है, that is part of India Stack system. So इसीलिए कोई भी अब आराम से अपना खुद का UPI प्रोग्राम बना सकता है. That is why so many different players are involved into this entire UPI mechanism. So the idea here is that it will be personal data, but personal data can be used as far as it is about sharing. Your personal data is protected. That is the goal. Goal ये है कि personal data will be protected. But because let's say for example I have to again KYC का example ले लेते हैं. So whatever your Aadhaar data is being shared, your Aadhaar data is properly protected here, it is encrypted. So that cannot be known, but nonetheless you can use this, or a particular bank can use this data and it can send OTP and it can verify your KYC. So your personal sensitive data is protected, but for the purpose of ensuring that everything happens smoothly, there will be some mechanism, there will be a proper encrypted mechanism. Their communication will happen, but your identity and your personal data is also going to be protected. So it focuses on both of those things simultaneously. ये last class में भी हम discuss कर रहे थे कि consent ज़रूरी है, और जो भी data अगर personal level पे share भी होगा, एक encrypted form में वो share होना ज़रूरी है, ताकि personal sensitive data public domain का part न बने. It is actually based on India stack का जो पूरा focus है वो based, जो पूरा logic यही है कि हम data empowerment protection architecture उसको use करके हम बनाएंगे. तो ऐसा बिल्कुल नहीं है कि consent नहीं है. हाँ वो embedded है, जो नीति आयोग का पूरा concept था ये data empowerment protection architecture, इसको use करके ही हम बनाएंगे कुछ भी जो भी integration होगा. Global declaration on future of internet, I don't think this is important frankly, except just one thing, that there is a concept called Budapest, very important convention, a legally binding convention called Budapest Convention on Cyber Security. This is, as of now, India is not a signatory of this convention. So there are two things which you should know here, that Budapest Convention जो है, this is a convention on global cyber security, and India has not signed this. India is not party of this convention as of now. And India का logic देखो बहुत simple सा है, that as part of this convention, lot of data which our intelligence agencies are collecting, then as part of this convention, India will have to share that data with global agencies, and India simply thinks that it may hamper our national sovereignty. So India, as of now, or even today, in fact, in this case also, India, China, Russia, they were not part of this declaration. So in this topic, only important thing, Budapest Convention on Cybercrime, and second thing, India is not a signatory of this convention, and this convention, by the way, is legally binding. So whenever India does sign this convention, if it does in future, then जो भी convention का एक बहुत simple सा जो aspect है, that you have to share data with global agencies, India will have to comply to that. And India has basically concerns regarding it, and that is why it has not become part of this convention. Internet governance is a topic which is more important for mains examination, but for prelims there are few things which you should know. The concept of internet governance is very simple, that internet does not belong to one entity frankly. As of now it is considered a global commons. Now how internet should develop and what will be the role of different stakeholders into it, all of those aspects are called internet governance. So as of now internet works on what we call multi-stakeholder approach. Multi-stakeholder approach simply means that internet has many stakeholders. For example, we as individual are stakeholders of internet, organizations have stake, NGOs have stakes, think tanks have stake, governments, private companies, all of these organizations have stake on internet, and all of them are on equal footing, including governments. That is the meaning of multi-stakeholder approach, that all stakeholders collectively will decide that how internet is going to develop. But few countries do not like it. सबसे बड़ा जो बढ़िया example है वो रशिया है. Russia is a huge critique of multi-stakeholder approach. रशिया का argument ये होता है कि multi-stakeholder approach को use करके what they are doing, they are trying to basically spread Western propaganda. So what Russia proposes, that adopt a multilateral approach. Multilateral approach क्या होगा, that governments will have the major say. There are other stakeholders, but governments will decide that how internet should evolve into future. So as of now, internet works on what we call multi-stakeholder approach, where all stakeholders, including government, are on equal footing, at least in principle, at least in theory. So there are some organizations, for example, there is a very famous organization called Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. ये जो organization है, दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन डिसाइड्स डोमेन नेम, जो भी आपका डोमेन नेम, फॉर एग्जांपल लास्ट में जो है .in .com जो लगा होता है, तो इंटरनेट एड्रेस अगर आप देखो कोई भी इंटरनेट एड्रेस है वो है तो अल्फाबेट्स नहीं हो, न्यूमेरिकल एड्रेस है, इट इज सम 123.5.6। अब वो किसी को याद नहीं होता। आपको अगर मैं youtube.com का अगर एक्चुअल एड्रेस आप देखोगे, that will be some random number, you cannot actually remember that. So we use these very famous things like youtube.com और facebook.com. तो ये जो डिसाइड करना कि डोमेन नेम, पर्टिकुलर डोमेन नेम कौन से कंपनी को मिलेगा, दैट इज डन बाय दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कॉल्ड इंटरनेट कॉर्पोरेशन फॉर असाइंड नेम्स एंड नंबर्स। अब ये जो एक जैसे इंटरनेट गवर्नेंस में एक बहुत बड़ा इशू एक जो निकल के आता है कि पहले तो ये बॉडी वाज पार्ट ऑफ यूएस गवर्नमेंट, that till 2016 this organization was actually part of US government. So a lot of people were not happy with it कि US government के मान लो रिलेशनशिप अगर किसी से अच्छे नहीं है तो किसी भी डोमेन नेम को शट डाउन करा सकते हैं। जैसे मान लो कि US ईरान के रिलेशंस अच्छे नहीं है एंड US गवर्नमेंट ने बोला आइकन को कि आप पूरा .ir जो डोमेन है उसको शट डाउन कर दो, राइट। वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू अलाउ दैट टू हैपन। सो सच टाइप ऑफ थिंग्स, lot of people criticized it. So as of now it is an independent organization, it is a completely independent organization, it is not part of US government, but there is still one concern which lot of people raise, that still it is a US body. Because it is a US body, it is bound by US laws. एक कोई सिंपल सा कोर्ट एक कोई जजमेंट पास कर सकता है कि तुम इस डोमेन नेम को खत्म कर दो और इस डोमेन नेम को तुम इशू नहीं कर सकते, समथिंग लाइक दैट। सो लॉट ऑफ पीपल डिमांड दैट ये जो बॉडी है icon, it should be part of, let's say, United Nations. It should have some sort of immunity and it should have representation from all the stakeholder and it should have some sort of immunity. But by the way, this is a very important organization when we talk about this entire concept of internet governance, and you should also know this entire concept of multi-stakeholder versus multilateral approach. As of now, internet has evolved on multi-stakeholder approach where all the stakeholders are on equal footing, including government. National Internet Exchange of India. So internet works because I told you in the last class that all of the devices, they have unique IP address, right? But it is also about many other, for example, you have different gateways, different servers, and all those gateways, all those servers are also following similar set of protocols, similar set of rules. अब जैसे मान लो एक simple सा, if I have to watch a simple YouTube video, then that YouTube video is stored somewhere in US, and from US that YouTube video is traveling with the help of optical fiber cables, and those optical fiber cables are spread all across Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean and Indian Ocean. So the key points, for example, every country जो भी traffic है, whatever data traffic which is flowing from India to, let's say, for example, other geographical domain, so there will be some key points. Those key points, for example, in case of India, those key points will be somewhere, few key points somewhere, some giant optical fiber cables near Indian Ocean. So it is job of some non-profit organizations, not just in India, but all across the world, that how this global traffic and how this Indian traffic, how they are going to integrate with each other. So it is not just in India, but across all the world, you will find organizations जिनका ये job होगा, ये करना, that how this internet traffic will be guided. So this topic is simply news because there is an organization called National Internet Exchange of India, which by the way is a non-profit organization, and that has established 2 new points in West Bengal under this entire concept of Digital India vision. And now you have 2 more to exchange internet traffic, you have 2 more of these points. So होगा क्या कि जैसे for example all of the devices in this area, and there will be a gateway, there will be some server which basically is, that server often will be, for example, created by your internet service provider. कि आपका मान लो जियो का फ़ोन नंबर है, आप मोबाइल पे आपके पास जियो का वाईफाई है, तो जो जियो वाईफाई का जो सर्वर होगा वो आपके रिक्वेस्ट को सही डायरेक्शन में राउट करेगा कि यू हैव टू वॉच अ पर्टिकुलर यूट्यूब वीडियो, वो कंटिन्यूसली आपके रिक्वेस्ट को राउट करते रहेगा, फिर वो जो सर्वर्स हैं उनके ऊपर एक सर्वर होगा, फिर ऐसे सर्वर होगा, समथिंग लाइक दैट. सो एंड because all of the devices are following same sets of rules and protocols, that is how internet is possible. So this topic is, I'm not very sure if it is that important, but you should know in one line, this organization, National Internet Exchange of India, it is a not-for-profit organization, and the purpose of this organization is to facilitate exchange of डोमेस्टिक इंटरनेट ट्रैफिक बिटवीन इंटरनेट सर्विस, जितने भी ISP प्रोवाइडर्स हैं, जितने भी इंटरनेट सर्विस प्रोवाइडर मेंबर्स हैं. तो इंडिया का जो फॉर एग्जांपल इंडिया बहुत सारा .in जो है दैट इज एक्सक्लूसिव टू इंडियन वेबसाइट. एक तो .com जैसे ग्लोबली हम यूज़ करते हैं, हर कंट्री का अपना एक ये होगा, फॉर एग्जांपल .fr फ्रांस का होगा, .ir ईरान का होगा, समथिंग लाइक दैट. तो ये .in रजिस्ट्री जो है इन इंडिया फॉर एग्जांपल दैट इज मेंटेन्ड बाय नेशनल इंटरनेट एक्सचेंज ऑफ इंडिया. तो जो भी नहीं, ये प्रोवाइड नहीं करेगा. बाय द वे बहुत क्लियर होना चाहिए, ये डोमेन नेम जो है .in वो ये नहीं प्रोवाइड करेगा. वो डोमेन नेम तो आइकन ही प्रोवाइड करेगा, और जो प्रॉपर एक रजिस्ट्री मेंटेन करने वाली चीज़ है कि सो कि हम ट्रैफिक को सही से मैनेज कर सकें, दैट विल बी डन बाय दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. इन वन लाइन, जस्ट नोट टू अफ्रीका पल्स. In one line, an initiative between Facebook and Airtel to connect many African countries with optical fiber cables. So Africa में जो global connectivity of internet है, especially जो broadband connectivity की हम बात करते हैं, वो बहुत limited है. So Airtel has lot of African presence, you should know that, and Airtel has collaborated with Facebook, and these companies are going to invest into this optical fiber cable, C cable, to provide internet into many African nations, and this initiative is called To Africa Pulse. So that just in one line, if I have to write, if I have to know about something from this topic, just in one line, an initiative of Airtel and Facebook to connect many African nations with optical fiber cable. Not important. ITU, already I have told you what is ITU. अब उसका एक रीजनल स्टैंडर्ड फॉरम हुआ था, दैट इज़ नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट फ्रैंकली. डिजी लॉकर इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इनिशिएटिव. अभी ये न्यूज़ में इसलिए है कि अभी तक चलो ये था कि यू कैन एक्सेस योर लेट्स से पर्सनल डॉक्यूमेंट्स, इवन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ एजुकेशन, मेनी स्टेट बोर्ड्स जो है वो दे हैव, यू कैन एक्सेस योर डिग्री ऑल्सो. तो आप रादर देन शोइंग योर फिजिकल कॉपी ऑफ डिग्री, आप यहाँ से डिग्री एक्सेस करके दिखा सकते हो, शो कर सकते हो. तो अभी तक बहुत टाइप के डॉक्यूमेंट्स, आपका ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस, पैन कार्ड और आधार कार्ड और योर डिग्री लाइसेंस, ये सारी चीज़ें आप एक्सेस कर सकते थे. दिस इज़ इन न्यूज़ बिकॉज नाउ इवन हेल्थ रिकॉर्ड कैन बी मेंटेन्ड ऑन डिजी लॉकर. दैट आजकल बहुत सारे जो हॉस्पिटल्स हैं दे आर बिकमिंग डिजिटाइज्ड. कोई भी आप हॉस्पिटल जाओगे, सो यू विल हैव दिस यूनिक पेशेंट ID आपको मिल जाएगा. सो ऑल ऑफ दैट हेल्थ रिकॉर्ड यू कैन एक्चुअली स्टोर एंड यू कैन एक्सेस विद द हेल्प ऑफ डिजी लॉकर ऐप. Telecom sector, we are very much dependent upon import in lot of things in telecom sector, especially in hardware. So this topic is in news, that how we can increase the intellectual property right in telecom sector. Frankly, not that important. कुछ initiatives हैं, एक fund है, Bharat Technology Bank, Intellectual Property Management Board. The goal of all of these organizations or these funds is that we have to have more and more patent with respect to telecom sector into India. Frequency modulation, there has been some guidelines approved by Government of India. Because of that, this topic is in use. Modulation is a very famous technique in communication technology. The idea of modulation is very simple, that often when you are using a radio frequency or radio wave, then that radio wave has low frequency. And low frequency, even though it is not susceptible to, I told you in the last class, कि जो higher frequency हैं, they are susceptible to some optical phenomena such as scattering, absorption. They cannot travel very far. But low frequency cannot travel very far because they have low energy. इनका energy ही कम है. So often what we do is that we use, मान लो मेरा message signal है. That message signal is going to be encoded onto another wave which will have high frequency. And now the resultant wave जो होगा, that resultant wave will have some characteristic, and that characteristic basically is my encoding mechanism. तो आप इसको ऐसे imagine कर लो, that imagine a piece of paper जहाँ पे some message has been kept, and if I have to throw this piece of paper cannot travel very far distance. But then I can wrap around this piece of paper around a stone, and I can throw this stone to a very large distance. And a person can easily recover that letter from that stone. So the act of modulation, जो modulation हम use करते हैं communication technology में, it is similar to that, that I have a message signal Imagine that message signal written on this piece of paper. That message signal cannot travel very far because it has less energy. So what we are going to do, we are going to use another wave which has higher frequency, and we are going to encode this information, and जो resultant wave है, that resultant modulated wave, that is going to now propagate. It has higher energy, it can propagate for longer distances. And then at destination there will be a device which is going to demodulate. Demodulate simply means that जो modulated result है, it can recover that result back from जो भी message original signal था, it can recover back from that modulated result. So this mechanism is called modulation, and modulation is a very famous mechanism. It happens in all communication technology. But there are mainly two ways of doing modulation. एक तो हमारा जो मैसेज सिग्नल है वो डिजिटल अगर सिग्नल हो, और एक मैसेज सिग्नल है अगर वो एनालॉग हो. तो डिजिटल सिग्नल को भी फिर फर्दर मॉड्यूलेट करने का 3 तरीका है, और एनालॉग को फर्दर मॉड्यूलेट करने का 3 तरीका है. सो वन ऑफ द वेरी फेमस मेथड ऑफ एनालॉग सिग्नल इज यूज ऑफ व्हाट वी कॉल फ्रीक्वेंसी मॉड्यूलेशन, जो हम एफएम रेडियो फॉर एग्जांपल जो हम यूज करते हैं. तो इन फ्रीक्वेंसी मॉड्यूलेशन I have my signal, I have my message signal which requires a carrier wave. Carrier wave, imagine that to be like this stone, and with help of this carrier wave जो modulated result है, this modulated result its frequency is going to not same, इसका amplitude same रहेगा but इसका जो frequency है वो अलग अलग रहेगा. And जो अलग अलग frequency है that is not random, that is a coding mechanism. That is how we have encoded our message signal in this modulated result, and now this modulated signal is going to travel and it can be demodulated at a particular destination. So frequency modulation is very useful because it is very less susceptible to noise. That is why जो FM radio है they have not lot of background noise, बहुत कम होगा. अगर आपने पुराने रेडियो जो AM रेडियो है अगर आपने यूज़ करा होगा, then you will realize that what I am talking about, that lot of background noise was there in this older radio. तो जो AM रेडियो है, AM रेडियो का जो रिजल्टेंट होगा that in amplitude modulation the resultant will look something like this. The amplitude is changing, amplitude is not fixed, amplitude is changing, and this change in amplitude is not random. This is a coding mechanism. We have encoded our original message signal into another carrier wave, and this encoded modulated signal now is traveling. But here is the thing, this is very much susceptible to lot of noise, lot of background noise. So both of in analog modulation, both AM and FM are very popular. तो रेडियो सिग्नल में, रेडियो में तो हम AM यूज़ नहीं करते, बट अभी भी हम टीवी में AM यूज़ करते हैं. टीवी में बहुत सारा जो है, बहुत सारे जो सिग्नल्स हैं, वी स्टिल यूज़ amplitude modulation. But this topic is about frequency modulation. Frequency modulation जो है, it has advantage, very less noise, easy to modulate. But there is a problem also that जो frequency modulation है, सबसे बड़ा जो problem है कि signal cannot travel frankly very far because frequency modulation uses higher frequency. So signal quality will be very good. That quality signal can travel up to some distance, but not a very large distance. जो AM रेडियो का बेनिफिट क्या है, नुकसान क्या था कि सिग्नल इज ससेप्टेबल टू नॉइज, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ बैकग्राउंड नॉइज, बट इवन दैट बैड क्वालिटी सिग्नल कैन ट्रैवल मच फार्दर डिस्टेंस कंपेयर टू FM रेडियो. सो दैट इज द फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस बिटवीन AM एंड FM. दैट इज वाई जो पुराने रेडियोज थे, ऑल इंडिया रेडियो, उसका एक ही कोई स्टेशन होगा, एक और एक स्टेशन जो है इट कैन केटर टू सो मेनी डिफरेंट एरियाज. फ्यू स्टेट्स विल बी केटर्ड बाय जस्ट वन रेडियो स्टेशन. पीपल in Africa, different countries could listen to all India radio with the help of AM amplitude modulation. But जो FM radio stations हैं, you cannot even listen FM of Delhi into Mumbai. That Radio Mirchi, for example, if it has a station, then it requires a station in Delhi also, in Mumbai also, because the range is not going to be very, quality will be very good, but the range will be frankly a very smaller reason. हाँ बिल्कुल करते हैं. तो एम्पलीफिकेशन और मॉड्यूलेशन हम दोनों साथ साथ यूज़ करते हैं. तो क्वेश्चन इज दैट मॉड्यूलेशन और एम्पलीफिकेशन में डिफरेंस क्या है. तो अगर मान लो मेरा सिग्नल बिल्कुल ही मॉड्यूलेटेड सिग्नल नहीं है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इन दिस केस दैट इफ आई डू नॉट यूज दिस माइक then there is a very good chance that people sitting in the back, they will not be able to listen to my voice. वैसे भी मोबाइल देख रहे हैं तो कहाँ ही सुनेंगे, right? So अभी भी समझ नहीं आया. anyways, so एक तो यही हो सकता है कि आप, for example, if with the help of this mic, I am amplifying my voice. So I need a power source basically. So this power source is provided by this mic. That is simple amplification. But often for communication signal, both modulation and amplification happens simultaneously. That first we are going to use modulate the signal, which will often require a carrier wave of higher frequency. And ये जो modulated result है, now that will be further amplified. So modulation and amplification, that happens simultaneously. Amplification always requires some external power source. Modulation requires a carrier wave of high frequency. Okay? But in communication, both modulation and amplification, they are used. Sorry? I'm not very sure. I do not know frankly, so I cannot comment upon it. फ्रीक्वेंसी सेम नहीं रहता. मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि फ्रीक्वेंसी बढ़ जाता है. मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि जो मेरा कैरियर वेव है उसका तो फ्रीक्वेंसी AM और FM दोनों में ही ज़्यादा रहेगा कंपेयर टू माय ओरिजिनल सिग्नल. बट FM का जो पूरा कोडिंग मैकेनिज्म ये है कि जो मॉड्यूलेटेड रिजल्ट है उसका फ्रीक्वेंसी सेम नहीं है. दैट फ्रीक्वेंसी इज कंटिन्यूअसली चेंजिंग, एंड दैट चेंज्ड फ्रीक्वेंसी, जो कंटिन्यूअस चेंज इन फ्रीक्वेंसी है, माई पॉइंट इज दैट इज नॉट रैंडम. That is a coding mechanism. That change frequency can be decoded at destination by the process of what we call demodulation. हाँ बिल्कुल. तो एक कॉन्सेप्ट होता है कि जो नॉइज है कौन से पैरामीटर पे नॉइज डिपेंड करता है. अब ये थोड़ा सा कम्युनिकेशन के हमको जाना पड़ेगा, बट अब ऐसे समझ लो कि जो नॉइज है दैट वेरी मच डिपेंड्स अपॉन एम्पलीट्यूड. दैट एम्पलीट्यूड अगर बहुत ज़्यादा चेंज हो रहा है तो नॉइज भी चेंज होगा. एंड फिर अगर आप नॉइज अगर एम्पलीफाइड है और आप उसको और एम्पलीफाई करो तो नॉइज इज गोइंग टू फर्दर एम्पलीफाई. इफ यू कैन मेंटेन अ कांस्टेंट एम्पलीट्यूड देन यू कैन एक्चुअली रिड्यूस द बैकग्राउंड नॉइज इन योर सिग्नल. So noise has something to do with amplitude, but frankly I will not go into this detail of this thing. eSIM is a new tool where you do not require a physical SIM. You can directly use this eSIM. Lot of telecom companies, they are providing this facility, and it has become easier. You do not have to, frankly, each and every time you do not have to go and buy your SIM. You can simply use this eSIM. I don't think this is very important. They work like very regular SIM. The only thing is that you can install them remotely. This is a analog chipset designed by Indian Institute of Science. The name of this analog chipset is Aryabhat 1. So the only question which I can expect, first of all, for me this is not a very important topic, but only question which I can expect, the term Aryabhat 1 is exactly what? It will be an example of analog chipset. Now analog chipsets, that is also a very interesting thing, that abhi jo hamare computers hain, they are digital, but many experts actually think that analog may also come back again, and maybe perhaps few computers, at least if not all of them, will be designed based on analog. So analog which is becoming outdated may actually come back again. So in any case, just one line, that this is an analog chipset designed by IASA. Not more than this is required for prelims examination, and frankly I do not think this to be a very important topic. No, you are not doing that, but if you want to look at the source code, you can easily do that. The question UPSC did ask last year is that which of the following are example of open source platform. So, and I will tell you that why this topic actually became important. Some people were making allegations that Arogya Setu jo data hai, it is actually compromising. Arogya Setu app pe bahut sara personal data, it is asking you to upload, lot of data is being shared. So it is compromising on personal sensitive data. There is threat to personal data of people. So government said that, the Ministry of Electronics Information Technology, they simply said that I am going to make it public. Look at the entire source code. So if source code is available to you, and if you can make changes to it simply, then it is called open source digital platform. And as of now, there are many government services. The benefit of such type of open source digital platform is that if there is a very good developer, good computer scientist, they can actually look at the source code, can make suggestions also, right? तो ये बहुत सारे government जो programs हैं, they are as of now part of what we call open source digital platform. So आपने जो भी example लिए, in fact all of them are example of such open source digital platform. दोनों का पर्पस ही अलग है. जो ओपन APIs हैं, so for example lot of companies develop APIs which you can subscribe. Open APIs, you will have some sort of subscription model, there will be some restrictions, but often you do not have to pay huge amount of money. If you want to make some changes, you have API available to you. If you want to make some your changes, you can do that. So there will be some license agreement with जो भी open API जिसने भी design कर रखा है, there will be some license agreement with that. And if you want to make some modifications based on your own requirement, you can do that. But the purpose of API is still simply that we want two apps or more than two apps that we can establish some sort of communication among them. Open source digital platform या open source जो है, that is a much broader concept. Open API is a very smaller example of that. Open source software or open source of knowledge, that is a broader concept. It can include lot of things, including open source digital platform or including open API. Okay? So in that sense they are different. Cyber security guidelines, I think more important for mains examination, but I already told you this organization, Computer Emergency Response Team, they have released these guidelines under Information Technology Act. Cryptojacking, this is a phenomena which happens that crypto mining requires a lot of computation. I told you in the last class, proof of work system. Bitcoin mining ke liye I need to have many computers, and all of those computers are doing computational work. The crypto mining में क्या होगा, जो hackers होंगे, they are basically using your computer. So your computer, which is basically आपको बिल भरना है, आप कंप्यूटर को चार्ज करोगे, आपका इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बिल है, आपका कंप्यूटर अगर खराब होगा, आपका कंप्यूटर खराब होगा. So the purpose of cryptojacking is very simple, that hackers can use computational resources of somebody else, but they are going to generate Bitcoin for themselves. So a type of cyber security threat which is called cryptojacking. The goal of cryptojacking is very simple, that an attacker can mine coins for himself or herself with the use of computational resources of somebody else's. Blue bugging with the help of Bluetooth. If you are especially part of public Bluetooth, then some hackers can actually hack into your mobile phone or your system computers, and they can steal your personal data. So this is called blue bugging. हैकिंग होगा, कंप्यूटेशनल रिसोर्सेज आप किसी और का हम यूज़ कर रहे हैं, कंप्यूटेशनल रिसोर्सेज हम किसी और का यूज़ कर रहे हैं, बट जो भी रिसोर्सेज हम यूज़ कर रहे हैं दैट इज़ डिज़ाइन, जो ब्लॉकचेन है, जो भी बिटकॉइन वॉलेट है वो मेरा है. सो विद द हेल्प ऑफ माय ओन बिटकॉइन वॉलेट आई एम यूजिंग कंप्यूटेशनल रिसोर्सेज ऑफ समबडी एल्सेस. सो आई एम यूजिंग सॉल्विंग अ प्रॉब्लम ऑन पब्लिक ब्लॉकचेन, बट फॉर दैट हाँ एग्जैक्टली हाँ फाइन हाँ ये भी बहुत क्लियर होना चाहिए. In cryptojacking ऐसा नहीं है कि I am solving this problem. The algorithms, everything is designed by hackers themselves, but they do require, because remember, Bitcoin का एक बुरा, कोई भी करेंसी तब काम नहीं करेगा अगर बहुत अनलिमिटेड सप्लाई हो जाए. अनलिमिटेड सप्लाई ऑफ अगर मनी हो जाए, then money's value is going to significantly decline. जैसे एक तो सिंपल सा अंडरस्टैंडिंग है ना कि मान लो if we are suffering from economic problem and RBI starts printing money, is it going to solve our problem? The answer is no. In fact, it will lead to problem of hyperinflation. So this always it's a simple law of economics, that an excess supply of money, that is not going to solve your problem. So how you are going to control money supply in Bitcoin, how you are going to control money supply? The answer is very simple, that more and more mining, as more and more Bitcoins come into existence, their mining is going to be more and more difficult. So that is why I told you in the last class that if you were doing mining into 2009, then you could have mined one Bitcoin perhaps with the help of your laptop. But now it requires hundreds and perhaps thousands of computers working in tandem, all of their computational resources being used together. जितना ज़्यादा कंप्यूटर एक साथ काम करेगा आपका पावर कंजम्पशन बढ़ेगा, पावर कंजम्पशन के साथ इतना सारा हीट जनरेट होगा, उस हीट जनरेशन के लिए आपको कूलिंग में इन्वेस्ट करना पड़ेगा. ऑल ऑफ दैट इज गोइंग टू कॉस्ट यू मनी, राइट? सो and that cost is, by the way, huge amount of money. It's not simple amount of money, it's huge amount of money. And cryptojacking का purpose ये है that we do not have to pay that money. It's not simply trial and error. Brute force attack simply means that a term which is basically used by cyber experts, that some cyber hackers what they can do is that they can completely compromise जो भी आपके security feature है, they can completely compromise that. So it is not simply trial and error. It is not trial and error, frankly. Brute force का मतलब with all the computational resources, with everything what they have, they are going to attack. For example, reading your personal messages or personal call, ये सारी चीज़ें जो हैं इसको hack करना, I can call it brute force attack. That आपका जो भी personal privacy है, that privacy is completely compromised. So again, a term used by cyber security experts in case of such type of hacking mechanism. Okay, I'm not very sure, but okay, so if you're saying that a trial and error, then theoretically that can take infinite time. So how are they going to find the correct code, for example? No, so frankly, I'm not very sure that in that context how the term brute force attack will mean. Hermit is a spyware. Spyware का simple purpose होता है, that is also like a virus, but spyware, as the name suggests, they are going to spy. So they will collect your personal information without you even knowing that something like this is happening. So बहुत famous जो spyware है, of course India के context में जो बहुत news में है, जो पूरा Pegasus वाला जो पूरा scandal था, that Pegasus where there was an allegation that government is using Pegasus to spy on citizens, to spy on opposition party. So spyware simply means that a new spyware is in news in market called Hermit, which can collect personal information, and because it is a spyware, you do not even have any idea that your personal information is being stolen. Paramporul is a new supercomputer installed at NIT Tiruchirappalli as part of this larger program of Government of India called National Supercomputing Mission. So National Supercomputing Mission I actually do think to be an important topic for either prelims or mains, because अभी तक UPSC ने पूछा नहीं है. The goal of National Supercomputing Mission is very simple, that we have to make many supercomputers in India. Initially it was based on import, assembly into India, but gradually our focus is that let's make supercomputers into India and let's install many supercomputers all across country in our research and development institutions, IITs, NITs, IASC, and let's connect them as part of a supercomputing grid. So these are some of the objectives of National Supercomputing Mission. The supercomputers they are very useful because they can store huge amount of data, and at the same time they can process huge amount of data, and because of this they can solve some complicated problems, some very difficult problems which cannot be solved by our normal computer. There can be many examples of this. Very good example is weather prediction. That weather prediction is a very complicated thing to do because weather depends upon many factors, and आप इतने सारे variables हैं, इतने सारे inputs हैं, थोड़ा भी input आप गड़बड़ करोगे जो weather prediction होगा वो बिल्कुल ही अलग होगा. So that is why कोई भी weather prediction आप देखोगे 3-4 दिन का होता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि 15 दिन बाद क्या होगा कोई भी predict नहीं करता. And the reason is very simple, a small change in input can have completely different result. So for solving such type of complicated problems you require supercomputers. In the last class I told you about black hole imaging. Now black hole imaging, ये जो पूरा event horizon telescope है, that actually collects hundreds of gigabytes of data, perhaps thousands of gigabytes of data. And then how to make sense of those thousands of gigabytes of data, they will require supercomputers. So supercomputers are very important for scientific research, for lot of applications like weather forecasting, climate modeling, big data analytics. So many things you have applications of supercomputer. So part of the first supercomputer of India, that was Param 8000. इससे पहले क्या था कि जो प्रत्यूष एंड मिहिर हैं, they were very famous supercomputers used for weather prediction and climate modeling. But in 2015, Government of India announced National Supercomputing Mission. The goal is to have at least 70 supercomputing facilities all across the country. And let's connect all those supercomputers on a very powerful network also, a high-speed network also. So let's have these 70 facilities and let's connect them with the help of a supercomputing grid. That is the objective of this National Supercomputing Mission. It is being implemented by Department of Science and Technology and Department of Electronics and Information Technology. And two organizations are playing a very important role in this implementation. One is Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, and another is this organization called CDAC, Center for Development and Advanced Computing. So जो CDAC है, that also works under Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. IAS Bengaluru, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. So two ministries, Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, via two organizations, CDAC and IAS Bengaluru. They are implementing this mission called National Supercomputing Mission. This concept of true number, random number generator. I'm not very sure if this topic is very important, but nonetheless you should know the concept. आपके पास जो भी OTP आता है, कोई भी आप पेमेंट करते हो तो कोई भी OTP आता है, आपको ये लगेगा कि OTP randomly generate हुआ है. But actually it is not a random generation. That OTP actually is designed as part of some algorithm, and that algorithm can be actually cracked. And if you have very powerful computational capability, if there is a cyber criminal who has very powerful computational capability, they can actually crack this OTP. So having this entire thing that आपने कोई कंप्यूटर प्रोग्राम बनाया कि वो रैंडम नंबर जनरेट करे, बट वो जो रैंडम नंबर जनरेट है वो एग्जैक्ट ट्रूली रैंडम नहीं होगा, वो पता किया जा सकता है विथ वेरी पावरफुल कंप्यूटेशनल कैपेसिटी, वो पता हम कर सकते हैं. And this is a problem in computer science. Computer scientists have faced this problem for very long. That true number generator आप produce नहीं कर सकते. So this is an open problem in computer science, that let's actually develop tools which can truly generate random number. What it means is that then it will become impossible to crack codes if you can in reality generate a true random number. And there are, so for example, why this topic is in news, because Indian Institute of Science के जो कुछ physicists हैं, they are using electrons quantum states to generate true random number. That is not important, but what is important is this concept of true random number generator. तो इसमें दो चीजें बस पता होनी चाहिए. सबसे पहले तो इसका significance कहाँ पे है? Significance is in cyber security. And second, why this topic? Because whatever number generator we talk about in our day-to-day life, they are frankly not truly random. They can be guessed. A facility has been started at IIT Hyderabad called Technology Innovation Hub on Autonomous Navigation, Smart Mobility. हमारे सारे जितने भी शहर हैं, all of them are facing problem of parking, traffic, so much pollution. So what can be perhaps some solution of this smart mobility? इसके लिए there has been an organization, a facility has been started called Tihan Technology Innovation Hub on Autonomous Navigation. So just two things in this topic. The objective of this facility is smart mobility, and it has been established at IIT Hyderabad. But I don't think that is very important. But nonetheless, if you have to know two things about this topic, just know about the objective. That in itself can be in fact quite significant. Now, one more thing which you should know is that this has been actually started under a mission called National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical Systems. तो साइबर फिजिकल सिस्टम्स क्या होता है, थोड़ा सा इस पे हम बस डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. साइबर फिजिकल सिस्टम्स का सिंपल मतलब ये है दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इंटीग्रेटेड कंप्यूटिंग सिस्टम्स इनटू फिजिकल वर्ल्ड, एंड जो इंटीग्रेटेड कंप्यूटिंग सिस्टम्स हैं दे आर मेकिंग आवर लाइफ ईजियर. जैसे इफ यू थिंक अबाउट इट, जो इंटरनेट ऑफ थिंग्स है विच आई वाज टेलिंग यू इन द लास्ट क्लास, इंटरनेट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट इज अ सबसेट ऑफ a larger concept, cyber physical system, that you have devices which are connected to internet and they are communicating with each other. These devices have smart sensors, and with the help of those smart sensors they are connected to internet. But however, in Internet of Things, this connectivity to internet, that is a prerequisite, that everything is connected to internet. In cyber physical system, that is not a requirement. For example, in cyber physical system I can have sensors that आपने आप sensors जो है, for example आप गाड़ी चला रहे हो, आपको कहीं पार्क करना है, if you are parking wrong, then maybe there is a sensor which is sending you a message, or it has started beeping that you are parking it in a wrong manner. Or a cyber physical system will be an example of a smart meter, that a smart meter आपके घर पे लगा हुआ है, and that smart meter is actually collecting data about how much unit of electricity you are producing, but maybe it is also collecting data कि आपके घर पे solar panel लगा है, and that solar panel is also producing energy, and that solar panel, how much energy is actually being produced by solar panel and how much energy you are actually using from the normal grid, it can, based on that, it can actually give you that how much money or electricity bill you have to actually pay. So such type of smart meter, that can be an example of what we call cyber physical system. So in many aspects, if you think about it, lot of sophisticated technology, robotics, even space technology, satellites, rockets, they have computers integrated to it. जैसे I told you in the previous class that जो rockets हैं, they have this integrated computing systems now, and these computers जो inbuilt algorithm है, they are designed in a way that they have very good awareness about where exactly they are and what type of decision they have to take. So ये जो है, that is also an example of what we call cyber physical system. So cyber physical system simply means that we are talking about cyber components, computing components integrated into physical world, and because of this integration, जो decision making है, that is becoming better and much more smooth. So there is a government mission called National Mission on Interdisciplinary Cyber Physical System, and ये जो पूरा facility है, Tihan facility, that has been made under this national mission. So I think that was, sorry, true number. नहीं, कॉन्सेप्ट सिंपल सा ये कि ट्रू नंबर जनरेटर का जो ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है, ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू हैव साइबर सिक्योरिटी. एक लाइन में सबसे पहले तो क्लियर होना चाहिए कि जो ट्रू नंबर जनरेटर है उसका फोकस कहाँ पे होगा. फोकस इज ऑन साइबर सिक्योरिटी. माय पॉइंट इज वेरी सिंपल, दैट वॉट एवर you have so many algorithms now which gives you numbers. Very good example is when you receive OTPs, that आपने कुछ पेमेंट करना है, आपके पास मोबाइल फोन पे OTP आता है. Now you may think that this OTP is random, कि there is a random number जो कि generate हुआ है, but truly it is not random. Truly, so for example, it actually follows a proper algorithm, and with very powerful computing resource, if there is a cyber criminal, it can decode that algorithm and it can actually know that what type of number can be generated. So the concept of true number generator is that it is completely random. It is, in reality it is random, not just it is giving you this impression that it is random, but in reality it is completely random. But such type of tools, such type of algorithms which can actually do that, and frankly nobody has been able to establish a proper two number generator algorithm. And ये topic was news में इसलिए है कि some scientists at Indian Institute of Science, they are using concepts of quantum states of electrons. Quantum mechanics for example can actually lead to true number generation. तो quantum technologies जो हैं, they will actually help in true number generation. जो existing technology हैं, they will not. So ये topic बस news में इसलिए था because some scientists are working in this direction. हाँ, रैंडम नंबर जनरेट में, हाँ, तो वही जो ट्रू नंबर जनरेटर, ट्रू रैंडम नंबर जो जनरेट है वो क्वांटम मैकेनिक्स जो है वो कर सकता है. इलेक्ट्रॉन्स का कोई भी मूवमेंट आप बात करेंगे तो क्वांटम ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाएगा. द मोमेंट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट एनी मोशन ऑफ सच सब एटॉमिक पार्टिकल्स, इट ऑटोमेटिकली बिकम्स क्वांटम. इलेक्ट्रॉन का जो स्टेट है दैट कैन नॉट बी डिपिक्टेड विद द हेल्प ऑफ नॉर्मल लॉज ऑफ फिजिक्स. Lot of topics are given, and again, by the way, this is a very important topic for especially prelims examination. तो सबसे पहले तो कुछ बेसिक चीज़ें समझ लेते हैं. वेरी श्योर ऑल ऑफ यू ऑलरेडी नो दिस, बट फिर भी हम बेसिक चीज़ें, बेसिक टर्म्स समझ लेते हैं. बेसिक टर्म्स समझने से क्या होगा कि सारे टेक्नोलॉजी को हम एक साथ डिस्कस कर लेंगे. देयर विल बी नो प्रॉब्लम. So first thing first, what you can understand is this entire concept of DNA, RNA, their role, and when we talk about gene editing, then what are we talking about exactly? That's frankly a very difficult question to answer, because and what you are saying is actually true. So most of the questions are application oriented question. So एक चीज़ बहुत clear होना चाहिए कि whatever you are studying, it is going to help you. But if, let's say for example, if your question is that we do not have to read anything beyond it, then my answer will be, I cannot say that. So first, and I also can assure you that there can be not a single material which can claim that everything UPSC is asking it is only from that and that material, especially questions of current affairs. There will be lot of statements which they are picking from websites, random websites. They are picking a theme and then they are making statements from different websites. I have many examples of that. मैंने last year का पूरा discussion लिया था, and I actually gave many examples in the part of discussion that how UPSC picked a theme from somewhere and they picked statement from different places. But nonetheless, that does not mean that you cannot attempt those things. तो जो attempt है, the best thing, especially I'm talking about science and technology section, their current affairs inspired question हर जगह आएंगे, but in science and technology, at least if there is a process oriented, if there is a application oriented question, the good thing is that they are not factual. They are very much, most of the statements are very much conceptual, they are analytical, and they can be eliminated and you can arrive at the right answer. So if your question is that is it going to be sufficient, then I don't think anything will be sufficient. It's not just about this material. I don't think there is any material which can be called that it is going to be sufficient. But I do think that it is necessary to read that. That depends from topic to topic. So, ये तो बहुत सारे topics हैं. That depends from topic to topic. So there are of course very good channels on YouTube. There is a very good website called indiascience.in, which is maintained by Department of Science and Technology. So जो indiascience.in है, it has discussion about all of the modern technologies जिस पे काम चल रहा है. So that website can be quite useful. There are certain YouTube channels, but here is the thing, if I recommend you channel, then channel पे तो बहुत सारे videos होंगे, तो वो काम का नहीं है. So it actually depends upon, if जैसे Lessix करके एक channel है which I really like for ICT. Lessix have this very good explanations, very good visual applications of lot of emerging technologies. There is a very good channel called Wired channel, WIRED, which explains a particular topic into 5 levels of difficulty. So I like that channel also. So there are many more. There is a channel called TED Ed, not TED Talk, but there is a channel called TED Ed. They have very good simple explanation of some difficult concepts. But nonetheless, rather than it is not about channel, it is about their particular videos which are going to be more useful, right? So if I give you just name of the channel, then it is going to be very challenging. So if there is a very prominent technology, जैसे मान लो blockchain technology है, proof of stake है, now this is something जो बहुत जगह आपको मिल जाएगा, but there will be some really good channels जहाँ पे explanations बहुत better होंगे. जैसे TED Ed पे जाना, वहाँ पे बहुत अच्छे videos हैं available. या ICT के जो topics हैं, that how simply a simple question, how mobile phone works or how internet works, something like that. Lessix जो channel है, it has really good explainer videos with very good animation. So I mean that depends upon from topic to topic, and not entire channel but certain videos of those channel that can be very useful. हाँ. हाँ बिल्कुल सही बात है. तो हाँ, जो वन वर्ड कीवर्ड वाले क्वेश्चन है इसको हम कैसे आंसर करेंगे? तो देखो इसका तो एक ही आंसर है कि सबसे पहले आपने कीवर्ड पढ़ा हुआ होना चाहिए। फॉर एक पहली चीज, अगर नहीं पढ़ा हुआ है कीवर्ड एंड फिर अगर आप कोशिश करोगे तो हो सकता है कि आप सही आंसर कर लो। साइंस टेक में तो चलो फिर भी पॉसिबिलिटी है, बट बहुत सारे और एरियाज में नहीं है पॉसिबिलिटी। जैसे आर्ट एंड कल्चर में नहीं है पॉसिबिलिटी है, कि हिस्ट्री में नहीं है पॉसिबिलिटी कि आपने कीवर्ड पढ़ा हुआ है और कीवर्ड पढ़ के आप आंसर कर रहे हो। बट साइंस टेक में चलो फिर भी है पॉसिबिलिटी। बट एट द सेम टाइम इसका देखो सिंपल सा सोल्यूशन ये है कि अगर आपने पढ़ा हुआ है तो देन ट्राई टू हैव सम सॉर्ट ऑफ विजुअल थिंग। जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल लास्ट ईयर यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था दैट दिस फ्रैक्शनल ऑर्बिटल बम्बार्डमेंट सिस्टम, राइट, कि द टर्म फ्रैक्शनल ऑर्बिटल बम्बार्डमेंट सिस्टम इज एसोसिएटेड विथ विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग, right? So that was, by the way, into newspaper. It was covered by many newspapers, and those newspapers did mention that why it was in news. China was testing a hypersonic missile, because of that it was in news, right? So once you have that perspective that China is developing a hypersonic missile and to demonstrate that they use this technology, then you have some background to it. And remembering that background is always easier rather than saying ki in hypersonic missile technology you keep your missile into LEO, then you target. ये याद करना ज़्यादा मुश्किल है compared to context क्या था, किस context में वो याद करना ज़्यादा आसान है. By the way, this was a big deal that China has tested a hypersonic missile. This was a big deal. It was covered by all newspapers, and not just in India but all across the world. So that is why this topic was asked by UPSC examination. But the good thing is that I also think कि ये जो term based questions, especially from science and tech या जो environment होंगे, there will not be some entirely very random obscure terms. They will be focusing upon some very prominent things which actually was covered by newspapers into detail with proper explanation or something like that. I am not commenting upon topics of other areas. I am commenting upon topics of science and tech or even topics of economics, by the way. Topics of economics भी अगर कोई अगर मान लो term based आता है तो भी random term नहीं होगा. कुछ ना कुछ एक बहुत important reason है जिसके कारण वो term news में था, and वो reason आपको पता होना चाहिए. So that is the beauty of UPSC questions, that you may think that there are 1500 words, 500 words, but I actually do not think that there are 500. There are few of them in every section. For example, for science and tech, there are maybe, for example, 20 or 50 keywords which you have to know. And if you have just the context clear in your mind that why they were in news, I think you can answer the question, right? So इसका solution बस यही है कि आप जितने भी keywords at least आपने पढ़े हैं आप उनको बस बार बार रिवाइज करते रहो, और कॉन्टेक्स्ट आपका आपके दिमाग में क्लियर होना चाहिए कि न्यूज़ में था क्यों. तो ये अगर है तो आप आराम से बहुत सारी चीज़ें भी एक साथ याद रख सकते हो. और रिवीजन इज द की हियर, दैट यू हैव टू, यू कैन नॉट जस्ट थिंक दैट एक बार आपने पढ़ लिया और आपका हो जाएगा. मेक वेरी क्रिस्प कंसाइज नोट्स. क्रिस्प कंसाइज नोट बनाने का फायदा क्या होता है, जैसे PT365 है, बहुत बल्कि मटीरियल है, बट इवन इन दैट बल्कि मटीरियल आई कैन हाईलाइट सम, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, some important tidbits. And next time when I'm going to revise, I'm just going to revise those things only, nothing else. And I will keep doing that after every 3-4 days. कभी भी बस एक बार पढ़ लिया, जहाँ वही टाइम मिला बस पढ़ लिया, वो ऑटोमेटिकली आपके दिमाग में फिट होते रहेगा. रिवीजन जो है वो आपके लॉन्ग टर्म मेमोरी में बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्प करेगा. ठीक है, लेट्स टेक अ ब्रेक हियर. आफ्टर दैट वी विल रिज्यूम द क्लास विद दिस टॉपिक ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी. Let's discuss some very basic definitions. In all living organism, the most important biological molecule will be a nucleic acid called DNA. Now, DNA is the hereditary material. Hereditary material in the sense that as part of the process of reproduction, any baby, any offspring will basically inherit the traits from his or her parents. So, for example, we have 23 pair of chromosomes. Chromosomes carry DNA, and we are getting 23 from father and 23 from mother. So in that sense, DNA is the hereditary carrier of genetic information from one generation to another generation. वो एक बहुत important aspect खुद में है. But in our body, as we live, what is the role of DNA? ये important है. So the most important role DNA has is what we call protein synthesis. That DNA has lot of encoded information. First of all, it has all of this encoded information about many of our behavior, many of our properties, many properties which can be seen, many properties which cannot be seen, but still they are there. For example, certain people can be very good athlete, or certain people can have very good can be very good musician, and that can also be perhaps simply because of certain genetic traits. So these are things which cannot be witnessed, but for example, few things which can be witnessed, such as let's say color of your eyes, right? So things like that, that is also because of your genes. So when we talk about DNA, lot of our properties, these properties are called genotype and phenotype. Genotype simply means that properties which cannot be seen, phenotype which can be seen. It is because of your genetic footprint. But the most important role DNA molecules play, that is in what we call protein synthesis, that they have all this information about different type of proteins, how it can be built inside our cells. Now apart from nucleic acid, जो proteins हैं, they are also very important biological molecules. Proteins do so many things. If you think about it, proteins are hormones, proteins are enzymes, proteins are antibodies. तो हमारे body के जो सबसे important functions हैं, they occur because of protein. If you are infected, then body produces antibodies, which is a type of protein. If you have eaten something which body requires a lot of effort to digest it, it has to secrete certain enzymes, that is protein. If you are feeling very happy, there are certain hormones which are released, and that is protein. So protein does lot of things in our body, and our body knows how to make thousands of types of proteins, thousands. And all of this information is encoded in our DNA molecule. तो ये सबसे important role है DNA molecule का हमारे body में. But DNA in itself does not produce protein. DNA has this information. Now, what do we mean by the term gene? That should also be clear. So while DNA is one molecule, and all of our cells have at their nucleus the DNA is there. However, there are small part of DNA is also part of our mitochondria. तो हमारे cell का जो nucleus है, that has DNA, but a very small part of DNA is also part of our mitochondria, which is called mitochondrial DNA. And I'm very sure all of you know that जो mitochondrial DNA है, we only inherit from our mother. We do not inherit that from our father. So in any case, what about genes? What exactly are genes? So genes can be considered as the functional unit of DNA. The functional unit of DNA which actually knows a part of a unit of DNA which actually has this encoded information about what type of protein needs to be made. So आप इसको ऐसे समझ सकते हो कि imagine an entire book which is DNA, and that book has dedicated chapters, and those chapters are dedicated to a particular theme. For example, the PT365 material, this entire PT365 material is, let's say for example, DNA, and it has for example chapters on ICT, on chapters on space. These chapters are the functional chapters, and they can be called genes. So genes are the functional part of DNA which has all this information about what type of protein needs to be made inside our cell. But DNA does not in itself make protein. DNA has this information, and if let's say for example a particular type of protein has to be made in our body, then DNA produces a molecule called, so DNA what, so the process is very complicated, but this entire process is called transcription, that it leads to development of an RNA molecule. That RNA molecule is called messenger RNA molecule, and this messenger RNA molecule now has this dedicated information about that a particular type of protein has to be made into body. There will be some other RNA molecules, for example there will be a transfer RNA, a ribosomal RNA, and finally the ribosomes they are called of course the factory, protein factory, and protein, a particular type of protein can be made inside our body. So while DNA is a very important molecule, important biological molecule, that it has first of all your footprint, your genetic footprint first. Second, it helps and it has all this information about what type of protein needs to be made, and that protein manufacturing in itself is a very complicated task, but this task can mainly be divided into two parts. First part is called transcription, second part is called translation. Transcription is when DNA transcribes this information into a RNA molecule, especially a messenger RNA molecule, and that messenger RNA molecule now will help in synthesis of a particular type of protein. So ये जो second part है, that is called translation. So transcription and translation. Now all DNA molecules have similar structure, molecular structure DNA का same है, but जो DNA is, for example, a very important part of your DNA molecule structure is a very important part of our DNA molecular structure is these 4 base pairs called adenine, thymine, cytosine and guanine. That DNA molecule, it's a double spiral or double helix structure, and these 4 molecules, these 4 groups, they are called base pairs, and ये जो adenine, thymine, they always will go together, and cytosine, guanine, they will always go together. So ये जो structure है, this structure is very important. So when I use the word, for example, in this question, in this topic, which is genome sequencing simply means that we have to find this entire structure. ये जो base pairs हैं, इनका order क्या है? If I have to write it down, कि ये जो base pair का orders क्या है? That writing down all of this base pair, ये जो mechanism है, that how all these base pairs are arranged into a very complicated DNA molecule, we call it genome sequencing. And why this is important? Because as I told you, DNA have our genetic footprint. So for example, traits, different type of traits, how we have acquired them, that question can be answered from a particular locus of DNA. That, for example, as I told you, few people are susceptible to, let's say there are people who are susceptible to certain diseases, that there are people who have never smoked, never consumed alcohol, but still suffer from lung cancer or liver cancer. So there is susceptibility to certain diseases. Apart from that, there are people who are suffering from genetic disorders. There are some genetic diseases. A very good example is sickle cell anemia, which is a genetic disorder. That is because a part of and that answer, that why certain people are more susceptible to certain diseases, that question can be answered if we have a very good understanding of how all these base pairs are arranged into our DNA molecule. And this is called genome sequencing. So I will come to that part later. Transcription जो है पहला process है protein synthesis का. जो protein synthesis है, it involves 2 processes. First process is called transcription, that a particular type of protein has to be made. Now DNA in itself does not make protein and does not actually help in synthesis of protein as such. Imagine it like that, it develops a messenger. All this protein synthesis के लिए जो भी information चाहिए, वो जो particular information है, that information it is providing that to this messenger, which we are literally calling it messenger RNA. So this messenger RNA molecule has now this information, and this messenger RNA molecule, with help of other RNA molecules, in fact, such as ribosomal RNA or transfer RNA, it can now help into the second part of protein synthesis, which is called translation. So while transcription is from DNA to RNA, translation is from RNA to protein. Simple. We have to make it very simple. Although this process is much more complicated, there are many sub processes involved here, but we have to examination perspective say I think this is more than enough. Now the very first topic which is given in your material about gene editing or genetically modified crops. So when I talk about gene editing, as I told you that if we can correctly identify that a particular gene is responsible for particular type of trait, or in this case, in the case of genetic disorders, if we can correctly identify that a particular gene is responsible for particular type of defect, particular type of genetic disorder, then now we have tools to get rid of that part of DNA. अब get rid of part जो है, इसको आप ऐसे visually मत imagine करना कि we are removing a part of DNA. So not like that. Whatever this change is happening, this change is happening at molecular level. Imagine there is a dictionary where there is a string of letters and some letters are being removed here and they are being replaced with some other letters. So imagine gene editing something like that. So we cannot, जैसे आप सर्जरी की तरह आप इसको इमेजिन मत करना कि वी आर रिमूविंग और कटिंग डाउन, इवन दो वी डू यूज द वर्ड मॉलिक्यूलर सीजर, बट डू नॉट इमेजिन इट लाइक इफ यू वांट टू, इफ यू आर थिंकिंग दैट some sort of surgery is going on, do not imagine it like that. We are making molecular level changes, we are making molecular level transformations, and now we have tools to do that. So when I use the word gene editing, it simply means that a particular locus of DNA, which basically is responsible for a type of trait or a type of disorder for that matter, that is being replaced, that is being removed. Now two things can happen. If a particular locus is being removed, then our body, our DNA has its own repair mechanism. The DNA can repair itself also. In the process of repair, there will be some new trait, some mutation can emerge. But we can also replace that with perhaps a foreign DNA, or we can guide that what type of repair mechanism we want. Now why I am distinguishing between these three things is actually very important for the topic we are going to study. So depending upon who you are talking to, there will be people who will call that all of them are example of gene editing. So three things can happen. That DNA, I told you what is gene. Gene is a functional part of DNA which basically has which is known for a particular type of trait, and it also has information about, it also is the functional part in the sense that it helps in protein synthesis. So when I use the word gene editing, it simply means that we are basically talking about alteration in DNA, that we are making certain molecular changes, and those molecular changes will help in perhaps removing certain traits. After that, I can leave it there also, that I have just removed certain trait, I have removed part of DNA. Now body can repair itself. As the part of repair, one trait has been removed, some mutation can emerge, and that's it. But then two more things can happen. The second thing which can happen is that you can in fact guide this DNA repair mechanism. You can have a template, and with the help of that template, because when body is repairing itself, you cannot actually decide what type of changes are going to happen. So you can guide this repair mechanism. That is also possible. And in the third case, in fact, you can introduce a lab-made DNA, a recombinant DNA, and that DNA can be introduced and it can replace the removed molecular changes. So now we have mechanisms which can do such level of molecular changes with very, very high precision. There are a lot of technologies, but three technologies are the most famous one. First is called CRISPR-Cas9, second is called ZFN, third is called TALEN method. So these three are the most famous method. ZFN, zinc finger nucleases, and third is called TALEN. So let me write it down. तो जो तीन सबसे फेमस टेक्निक है, CRISPR-Cas9, तो ये जो दो टेक्निक्स हैं, ZFN and TALEN method, in these two techniques we use a type of enzyme. These enzymes are called nucleases. So there is a word here, यहाँ पे जो N है, in both the cases this N represents a word here, nucleases. Now nucleases is a very specific type of enzyme, and the benefit of nucleases is that this enzyme can actually introduce a double stranded cut of DNA, that it can replace जो भी हम molecular level changes की हम बात कर रहे हैं, it can do that with very high precision. So these are enzymes which can lead to alterations, which can lead to changes into DNA. These enzymes, we can make them into lab, and we can introduce if you want to make certain changes at particular locus at DNA. Now compared to that, जो CRISPR technique है, this CRISPR technique uses a guided RNA molecule, while they use nucleases, which is a type of enzyme, and this enzyme can lead to what we call double stranded cut. Like a scissor, in CRISPR technique we use a guided RNA molecule. This guided RNA molecule has this information that which part of DNA, which part of whatever changes is going to happen, where exactly this change has to happen. So guided RNA molecule which will produce a very specific type of protein, that protein is called Cas9, and this Cas9 can now actually remove a part of DNA. So in these cases we call them molecular scissors, that they are making these changes like a scissor. If you want to imagine it like this, like a scissor, they are removing a part of DNA. But again, that is only and only if you want to visualize it, because these changes are happening at molecular level. So it's not like that a part is being removed here, literally being cut out here. But nonetheless, these three are very famous gene editing technique. जो CRISPR-Cas9 है वो सबसे suitable, सबसे बढ़िया तरीका है, because it can do gene editing with very high precision. CRISPR technique को बनाना बहुत आसान है. CRISPR technique gives you better results. So there are hardly any technology which are more sophisticated, takes less time and less expensive also. But CRISPR has all this benefit. That even TALEN method and zinc finger nucleases, ZFN method, they are also very popular. Before CRISPR-Cas9, in fact, they were quite popular. But the CRISPR-Cas9 method hai, that has become much more popular. In fact, it is right now as the to-do method जो होता है कि हाँ यही method हम use करेंगे. It has become like that. And it was only developed, I think, in 2012. 2012 by these two scientists, two group of scientists led by these two Nobel laureates now, by the way, last year they got Nobel Prize in Chemistry, Emmanuel Shapanti and Jennifer Doudna. So in any case, all three of them can introduce a particular changes at a particular locus of DNA. Now let's understand all of these topics with all this information. We will also talk about CRISPR-Cas9 in some detail, but let's talk about all of these topics one by one. So the first topic which is given, major approaches to genome editing, CRISPR-Cas9. But CRISPR-Cas9, by the way, is also an example of site-directed it is not exactly nucleases. It is because it uses a guided RNA, so it is not exactly nucleases, but it is site-directed. Yeah, I do not think कि ये जो homing endonucleases और meganucleases है, इसको अलग से जानने की ज़रूरत है. It's meganucleases simply means that now scientists have developed certain techniques which can make changes DNA on a larger scale. It can make changes up to in fact 15-20 base pairs compared to earlier techniques such as ZFN or TALEN method जो है, which can only make a very precise change at one location. But here is the thing, one location जो precise changes हैं वहाँ पे फिर भी predict करना that what type of traits will emerge वो easier है compared to if you are making changes across many base pair. Then what type of changes will emerge इसको predict करना बहुत मुश्किल है. So we can do that with the help of meganucleases, but nonetheless there are also more risks involved. I will come to this risk part also, कि why gene editing always is so debatable. This topic, ये जो एक term दे रखा है आपका कि there are many laws, यहाँ पे कुछ चीज़ें तो बहुत obvious है, जो Biological Diversity Act है, Drugs Cosmetics Act, right? Even Seed Act because we are talking about genetically modified crops. Protection of Plant Varieties Farmer Rights Act, again we are talking about genetically modified crops. Food Safety and Standards Act, we are talking about genetically modified food, basically food which has been produced by genetically modified crop. And disaster management, because a gene already we have, for example, now again ये theory फिर से वापस आ गया कि जो पूरा COVID है that was a leak from lab, right? So that theory is again in use. So why Disaster Management Act is here? Because there can be a biological disaster, and biological disaster led by perhaps a genetically modified virus or genetically modified bacteria. So hence even Disaster Management Act has some bearing on this concept of genome editing. I don't think you have to know this exact number, but it will be 15 to 20 base pairs. So first thing first, पहले तो ये topic news में क्यों है? Now there are two reasons why this topic is in news, and both reasons are equally important. First reason is that a variety of mustard, GM mustard known as DMH11, by the way it is not a new news. This was actually approved in 2017 only, right? And again this organization called Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee has again approved it, and because of that again it is in news. तो ये तो पहला कारण है. जो दूसरा कारण है वो इसलिए है कि as of now Department of Biotechnology has released a guideline for the safety assessment of genome edited plants. Now what those guidelines are, I will come to the institutional setup, all of those things later, benefits, etc. But let me briefly tell you that what these guidelines are. As I told you that there can be 3 approaches to gene editing. In one approach, if I am talking about specially genetically modified crop, why would we want that? We want to basically introduce perhaps a type of trait. We want to develop a variety which can resist pests. We want to develop a variety which perhaps, for example, has micronutrients. We want to develop a variety which perhaps can, where production is not going to decline despite the fact that it is receiving less water or it is receiving saline water. So if you want to introduce some desirable traits, you can use gene editing. But there is always concern also of gene editing, because we are talking about something new here which is not natural. Then what type of impact it will have on its surrounding ecosystem, we cannot actually we cannot predict that. So lot of ecologists, lot of experts always are fearful of that such type of gene editing may lead to toxicity into surrounding ecosystem, can also lead to, let's say for example, some health hazard into human beings as well as other animal. So lot of ifs are there, that there can be something like this, there can be something like this. In many cases, lot of this fear are exaggerated, but nonetheless, that does not mean that we completely ignore warnings by experts. So experts will always warn, and the warning is always and always based on similar lines, that we are talking about artificial crops here, we are talking about genes which are introduced into a lab environment. We are not talking about natural crops. So what will be the impact on the surrounding ecosystem, on the safety of other organisms, on health of human beings? All of those things you cannot predict, and some changes in fact can lead to significant disaster. So a lot of fear is associated with genetically modified crop. Few countries, few continents in fact, जो यूरोप है, especially Western Europe है, that is very serious about genetically modified crop. It does not allow any type of genetically modified crop. It does not allow any type of import from any other country which is actually producing genetically modified crop. This was also in news that some European countries found out some type of variety of rice which was genetically modified, and turned out that the origin of this rice was India, which is very surprising, because in India genetically modified rice is not allowed. लीगली आप जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड राइस प्रोड्यूस नहीं कर सकते, तो जो भी ये प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है वो लीगल लेवल पे हो रहा है, तो प्रोडक्शन भी हो रहा है, एक्सपोर्ट भी हो रहा है ऑफ दिस जेनेटिकली मॉडिफाइड वेराइटी. सो दैट वाज आल्सो इन न्यूज़. सो इन एनी केस, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी हैज अ गाइडलाइन that there can be 3 approaches to do gene editing. In the first approach, which is called site directed nucleases 1, site directed simply means that we are talking about making alteration at a very specific locus of DNA. In this first method, what we will do, we will just remove perhaps part of DNA, some base pairs, and we will allow the cellular mechanism to repair itself. So we are not doing anything except we are just removing certain traits. In that scenario, and we are also not introducing any type of foreign DNA. However, जो cellular mechanism जो repair है, आप उसको guide नहीं कर सकते इस case में. So in the second method, which is called site directed nucleases 2, do not go into this complication, whatever it is written, but it simply means one line, that ये जो body का जो cellular repair mechanism है, we are guiding that. We are using a DNA template for it, and with the help of a template, we are guiding this repair mechanism. And in site directed nucleases 3, now you are not just removing, but you are adding a lab made DNA. You are adding what we call recombinant DNA, a gene which has been designed into lab, a synthetic gene here. And that synthetic gene has been designed into lab with the help of perhaps 2 or more than 2 organisms. That we can call it site directed nucleases 3. तो जो डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी का गाइडलाइन बहुत सिंपल है. This guideline is based on what US government practices. That जो SDN1 है and SDN2 है, in both the cases we are not introducing any foreign DNA into a plant, into a crop. हमने कोई lab में DNA यहाँ पे add नहीं करा है. तो इसका कुछ as such impact जो होगा, जो fear है, वो impact जो है वो randomly exaggerated है. In fact, there will be as such very negligible impact, and for whatever impact we can always do clinical trials and we can come to a conclusion. So they can be considered relatively much more safer compared to the third thing where we are actually adding a synthetic gene. Now that ये जहाँ पे जो fear है that it can lead to toxicity, it can have health hazards, so that fear perhaps can be understood. So Department of Biotechnology has a very simple guideline कि अभी जो भी existing mechanism था, जो regulation of genetically modified crop था, 50 तरीके के आपको approval चाहिए from different organization, ये सारी चीज़ें ease up होंगी for this first two technique. If you are doing SDN1 or SDN2, then many approvals, regulatory requirements, all of those things are going to ease up, because the focus of Department of Biotechnology is that we have to promote research into this area. However, for the third technique, SDN3, the regulation which as of now what it is going to continue for the third technique. So that is the context of the news, that why this topic has been given here. In second technique, we are just guiding whatever alteration has done, we are guiding it. Now how do we guide it? We do not have to frankly go into this detail. We use what we call a double-stranded DNA template. But still we are not adding any foreign DNA here. In first technique, alteration, we are removing part of DNA, letting the cell repair itself. In second technique, we are guiding the repair. In third technique, we are now introducing a synthetic gene. Department of Biotechnology has simple guideline that for first and second, जो regulatory requirement है, they are going to be very eased up. But जो third technique है, वहाँ पे जो regulatory requirement है, वो फिर भी same रहेगा. तो regulatory requirement है क्या exactly? तो जो सबसे important act है यहाँ पे, the most important act for such type of thing is actually an act called Environment Protection Act. So it is not any other act, but there is a very important act called Environment Protection Act, that any type of introduction of genetically modified variety, what it can lead to ecosystems, we have to be very cautious about it. And under Environment Protection Act, there is a very important body which is called Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. It is given here. This is a statutory body, statutory in the sense that it has been made under this law, Environment Protection Act. It works under Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, and ये जो organization है, that will decide safety of any new type of genetically modified variety. It will do clinical trials, and it will do clinical trials for many years, hopefully 2, 3, 4 years, and then based on those clinical trials, it will give its input, its suggestion to ministry, in this case Ministry of Environment, that if it is safe or not. तो यहाँ पे जो regulatory requirement है, so this is the most important body, but apart from that there are many other institutions at smaller level also, that you require approval from many organizations if you are doing any type of research in the field of gene modification. So for SDN3, those approvals, those requirements are still standing. For SDN1 and SDN2, requirements and approvals, they have been eased up. So that is the context of the news. But it is GESC which is going to provide input to minister that how safe a particular crop is. But the final decision will be decision of minister. वो Minister of Environment, Forest, Climate Change होगा, वो decide करेगा कि हमको जो भी genetically modified variety है वो allow करना है कि नहीं करना है. Now, as of now, in India there is only one variety, genetically modified variety, which has been allowed, which is BT cotton, a genetically modified crop variety. So जो GM crop जो हम बात करते हैं, एक ही legally एक ही variety अभी तक allowed है, that is BT cotton. But GESC few years ago, 4-5 years ago, it actually gave approval that mustard का जो production है इंडिया में वो धीरे धीरे कम होते जा रहा है. तो GESC did this clinical trial of this variety called GM mustard, or more popular name is DMH11. So DMH11 is this genetically modified variety of mustard which has been developed by two organizations, Delhi University and Indian Council of Agricultural Research. By the way, UPSC ने ये भी क्वेश्चन पूछा था. एक स्टेटमेंट एक बार जब आया था न्यूज़ में था 2018 में, तो यूपीएससी का एक स्टेटमेंट यही था that it has been developed by Punjab University and some other institute was given. That was a wrong statement. So DMH11, and by the way, why this is important? Why this fact is important? Because there is another criticism of genetically modified crop, and that criticism is that most of the GM crops, they are designed by these multinational companies. जैसे Monsanto is a very famous company for that. And these companies, what they do, they often develop a type of seed which is called terminator seed. Terminator seed simply means that जो भी आपका produce होगा, बहुत बार क्या होता है कि आपको seed जो है produce से मिल जाता है, तो जो भी produce होगा, from that produce you can find seed for the next generation of crop. But terminator seeds जो होंगे, they will not produce the next generation of crop. So now because these companies have patent, all farmers they have to mandatorily buy only from them and them. So it can lead to monopolistic situation, and it can be harmful for small and marginal farmers, or even for big farmers for that matter. So there is a economic concern also. Apart from the environmental concern, there is a economic concern also against genetically modified crop. Because of this, that the fact that two public institutes, Delhi University and Indian Council of Agricultural Research, has developed a variety, that fact is important. Because ये जो economic concern of monopoly है या exploitation of farmers है, वो यहाँ पे नहीं है. Because ये government के institutes हैं, public institutes हैं, उन्होंने develop कर रखा है इस variety को. Sorry? Terminator seeds simply means that these seeds will not produce. So for example, हमने seed खरीदा company से, I have bought seeds from company, I have my crop. Often you will find that from the current standing crop, I can find seed for the next generation of crop. That is a very standard agricultural practice. But in terminator seed, whatever seed you are going to get, that is not going to be fertile. It will not produce the next generation of crop. So next year also you have to, and by the way, because they have a patent of this particular type of genetic variety, then you have to just keep buying from, and it can lead to a monopolistic situation. So there is an economic concern associated with genetically modified crop. Sorry, which variety? No, not at all. High yield variety जो है, that does not have to be genetically modified variety. That should be very clear. We can always do mutation breeding. There is a question that जो high yield varieties हम introduce किया हमने इसे as part of, let's say, green revolution. Is it an example of gene modification? Not at all. जो high yield varieties develop करने के बहुत सारे तरीके हैं. जो सबसे famous तरीका है, that is, let's say, hybridization. That taking two crops or one crop, normal crop, and breed that with some wild variety and develop a hybrid crop. तो जो hybridization, budding, बहुत सारे तरीके हैं in any such, but here is the thing, such type of techniques they are called mutation breeding. जो mutation breeding है, in mutation breeding you actually cannot control what type of behavior is going to emerge. Let's say if you are developing a hybrid crop, I have taken one variety of rice, मान लो हमने बासमती rice लिया, and I have taken a wild variety of rice. Wild variety because that wild variety can sustain lot of environmental changes. And based on that we are now developing a hybrid variety. If I do this hybridization 2 times or 100 times, there is a very good chance that every time I am going to find some different hybrid variety. There will be some minor modifications. So in that sense you cannot actually control the output, कि आपका output जो है वो क्या है. तो जो mutation breeding है, that is not considered as an example of gene modification. Gene modification always and always will involve certain type of techniques which can introduce changes at a particular site, such as ZFN, TALEN, CRISPR-Cas9, etc., etc. So because of this topic was in news. What exactly is gene modification? Department of Biotechnology mandate this fact. Environment Protection Act, very important act. BT cotton is the only GM crop allowed in India. What can be advantages? What are concerns associated with genetically modified crop? अब जैसे यहाँ पे देखो, जीनोम एडिटिंग टेक्नोलॉजी एंड ट्रांसजेनिक टेक्नोलॉजी. तो जो अब ये अगर आप सेम चीज अगर आप यूरोप में जाओगे, दे विल से दैट दे बोथ आर सेम थिंग. फॉर यूरोपियन कंट्रीज, SDN1, SDN2, SDN3, ऑल ऑफ देम आर जीन एडिटिंग. नथिंग इज अलाउड. कोई भी इंपोर्ट वो बाहर से अलाउ नहीं करते, वो खुद भी प्रोड्यूस अलाउ नहीं करते. बट US गवर्नमेंट फॉर एग्जांपल हैज अडॉप्टेड दिस डेफिनेशन दैट SDN1 and SDN2, let's call it simply gene editing, that we are not introducing anything new here, any synthetic gene we are not introducing. However, when I use the word transgenic technology, that literally means that we are talking about introduction of some synthetic gene into some crop variety. So again, it depends upon ये जो differentiation है, it depends upon where you are reading this topic. Because in Europe, these two terms will be simply used with one term, gene editing. There is nothing called transgenic for their all practical purposes. Even though yes, there are differences. If you think about it, in terms of practices, there are differences. But for their regulation, in Europe, there is no difference. Any type of gene modification, चाहे वो SDN1 हो, 2 हो, 3 हो, कुछ भी allowed नहीं है. Sorry? SDN is an approach to do gene editing, yes. So SDN, whenever I am using the word site-directed nucleases, site-directed simply means that I am talking about making changes at a particular locus of DNA. And nucleases here signifies an enzyme which can lead to this double-stranded cut. Simple. So yes, SDN is actually approach to do gene editing. हाँ, और जितने भी टेक्निक्स हमने बताए दे आर एग्जाम्पल ऑफ SDN1. आई कैन हैव, अब ये जरूर SDN1, SDN2, SDN3, हम ये जो 3 टेक्निक हमने डिस्कस किए, वी कैन यूज एनी ऑफ देम. द ओनली थिंग इज दैट जो CRISPR-Cas9 है, रादर देन यूजिंग न्यूक्लियसेस, इट यूजेज अ गाइडेड RNA, बट स्टिल इट इज साइट डायरेक्टेड, दैट इट कैन मेक चेंजेस एट वन पर्टिकुलर लोकस ऑफ DNA. नहीं, जरूरी नहीं है. रेस्ट्रिक्शन एंजाइम एक खुद में अलग कॉन्सेप्ट है. रेस्ट्रिक्शन एंजाइम सिंपली मीन्स दैट सर्टेन टाइप ऑफ जेनेटिक एक्सप्रेशंस आर बीइंग कंट्रोल्ड, सो दैट कैन आल्सो लीड टू चेंजेस एट जेनेटिक लेवल, बट वो एक बहुत ही स्पेसिफिक एप्लीकेशन हो गया. रेस्ट्रिक्शन एंजाइम जो है, अच्छा, आई थॉट यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ RNA इंटरफेरेंस. ओके, हाँ, तो इन रेस्ट्रिक्शन एंजाइम को बोलते हैं मॉलिक्यूलर सीजर. Okay, ठीक है. I will have to check the vocabulary, but I am frankly not very sure about it. Right? I actually thought when you use the word restriction enzyme, you are talking about RNA interference. जरूरी नहीं है. मैंने बिल्कुल किसको, environmental concern ज़्यादा बड़ा concern है. The question is that हम GM crops को क्यों नहीं allow कर रहे हैं? Simple सा जो environmental concern है कि it can lead to biosafety. It can lead to perhaps some sort of super weeds, super pests. It can lead to toxicity, allergy, all of those concerns are frankly grave concerns, and many experts, that is why they speak against genetically modified crop. हाँ, तो थ्रेड तो अगर हमको करना हो तो हम कुछ भी बोल सकते हैं. अगर इट इज अबाउट कि हाँ ये हो सकता है वो हो सकता है तो हम कुछ भी बोल सकते हैं. बट अगेन in my personal opinion, lot of this fear is exaggerated a lot, because believe me, you already are eating lot of genetically modified crop, because lot of import is happening from, let's say, US, and US is producing more than 20% of their rice and more than 20% of their wheat from genetically modified variety. So it already is happening, and any type of import processed food which you are eating from outside, there is a very good chance that certain component of that is genetically modified variety. तो ऐसा है नहीं कुछ कि हम बिल्कुल बचे हुए हैं genetically modified varieties है. But because there is so much of fear, and in India, by the way, you should also know there is a very powerful pressure group which speaks against genetic modification, and because of that ये gene modification जो है इतना ज़्यादा सिर्फ एक ही variety legally allowed है. But illegally, again, as I told you, that illegally हो सकता है बहुत सारी चीज़ें already हो रही हो. So DMH11, it has used 2 varieties of mustard. That is in itself interesting, but it also uses a bacterium basically which can actually help into making it, it can actually help. So second is this gene capable of producing seed and grain, and it can also more effectively fight against pests. So this will be an example of SDN3 जो DMH11 है, because it does introduce some foreign genes, it does introduce synthetic gene of certain bacteria. CRISPR-Cas9 UPSC ने कम से कम 2-3 बार क्वेश्चन पूछा है प्रीलिम्स में, बट अभी तक जो भी क्वेश्चन आए बड़े सिंपल से आए, एक लाइन में व्हाट एग्जैक्टली इट इज, द आंसर वाज जीन एडिटिंग. सो दैट इज, दिस इज द टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चन. 3 बार आया, एक बार सीधे यही आया था, द टर्म Cas9 is associated with which of the following, the answer was gene editing. एक बार एक मैच द पेयर आया था, 3 टर्म्स, विच ऑफ द पेयर्स आर करेक्टली मैच्ड. तो अभी तक जो क्वेश्चंस आए हैं बहुत सिंपल आए हैं, बट फिर भी वी शुड नो सम बेसिक थिंग्स अबाउट CRISPR-Cas9. First, this two group of scientists, they found out they were actually researching about immunity of bacteria. जैसे हमारा immune system है, वैसे bacteria can also be infected by viruses. Viruses can infect anything. They can infect protozoas, fungi, bacteria, plants, animals, anything. So viruses can infect bacteria. Now when viruses infect bacteria, they are going to hijack their cellular mechanism. So bacteria have very, and by the way not all bacteria have same mechanism. ये भी बहुत clear होना चाहिए कि जो CRISPR mechanism है that is limited to very few bacteria. Now bacteria have a very limited time. It's like a ticking time bomb that if they do not do something very soon, their entire cellular mechanism, it is going to be hijacked by viruses, and they will multiply with the help of bacteria's cellular mechanism. So certain bacteria, they have this immune system. As part of this immune system, a part of their DNA, a locus of their DNA which is called CRISPR, that CRISPR has information about lot of viruses which, by the way, they were infected in the past. And this CRISPR, for example, it knows that what type of viral जो भी RNA or DNA है, what type of viral DNA RNA it is, where it is infected. It can produce its own protein. First it can produce its own guided RNA. That guided RNA knows which part of DNA has to be removed so that we can get rid of this viral infection. And that guided RNA now will produce a protein which is Cas9 protein, and that Cas9 protein will now work like a molecular scissor and remove that part of infected DNA. And all of that has to happen in a very fast time, otherwise it's like a ticking time bomb. So these two group of scientists, they were researching upon the immune system of bacteria, and they found by again this great accident that certain bacteria have this defense mechanism where their cellular, their genetic mechanism, their DNA actually helps in fighting viral infection. Now that was of course a moment of eureka for them, because they thought that this can be replicated into lab. If we can replicate the same process into lab, that if we can identify which part of DNA has to be, for example, altered, then based on that we can design a guided RNA molecule, and that guided RNA molecule can produce this Cas9 protein, and that Cas9 can lead to this alteration. So compared to nucleases, which is an enzyme, this is guided by a guided RNA molecule, literally. Why this topic is in news? Because 10 years have passed since its discovery. It was discovered in 2012, and both were awarded, by the way, in 2020 also for it. So a defense mechanism which occurs naturally in bacteria, and bacteria can alter part of their DNA if infected by viruses. That defense mechanism can be replicated into lab, and that mechanism led to the discovery of what we call CRISPR-Cas9 technique. So CRISPR-Cas9 technique inherently is a gene editing technique, and this is one of the most precise gene editing technique. It is very sophisticated, it gives result in very short span of time, and the best part is that it is very, very less costly. And all of those things, it is rarely there present in any technology. अब इंडिया में तो चलो फिर भी रेगुलेशन बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग है, यूएस में रेगुलेशन बहुत रिलैक्स है जीन एडिटिंग को लेके. तो मेनी स्टार्टअप्स हैड इमर्ज्ड इनटू यूएस जो कि CRISPR-Cas9 लोगों को बेच रहे थे, किट बेच रहे थे, कि वो आपको एक मेढक भेजेंगे, एक CRISPR-Cas9 किट भेजेंगे, आपको पूरा प्रोसेस बताएंगे कि आप ये प्रोसेस करो, मेढक आप जीन मॉडिफाई कर दोगे. सो दे वर बेसिकली गिविंग जीन मॉडिफिकेशन किट. वहाँ पे they had taken this gene of basically a guided RNA molecule which can lead to a modification where you can introduce, for example, some luminous insects. कुछ insects होते हैं ना जो चमकते हैं, shine करते हैं. So you can actually introduce that into frog, and you can actually look at changes in the skin color of frog after few days. So CRISPR-Cas9 is so simple that on a piece of paper, as part of a protocol, you can actually do that at your home. So, and why this is important? Because जो gene editing है, that has to be very precise, because we are talking about making changes at the genetic level, and we frankly cannot lot of time predict what type of changes will happen in the future. And ये जो बहुत बड़ा कारण ये है कि जीन एडिटिंग को लेके इतना सारा डिबेट रहता है हमेशा, कि जो सेफ्टी वाला इशू है, that if you do not make, if you are not very precise, safety वाला issue, that is lot of concern. Of course there are more concerns if I am talking about gene editing in human beings. जैसे there is a concern of this designer baby. CRISPR-Cas9 is so precise that it can alter gene of germ cells. Our body has two type of cells, somatic cells and germ cells. Somatic cells are non-sexual cells. जो germ cells हैं, they are sexual cell. जो sperm, egg है, they are example of sexual cells. And CRISPR-Cas9 is so precise that it can do actually gene modification in germ cells. Germ cell को modify करने का benefit क्या होगा? That any type of alteration, it is now going to continue for the entire generation. जो भी species का जो भी next पूरा generation होगा, that alteration is going to be there. तो fear भी फिर यही है कि if any type of problem emerges, then that problem is going to continue for the entire generation. And that is why germ editing जो है और germline editing जो है वो banned है, including India. Some countries may allow it, but in India it is banned. I remember in 2014 there was a global hue and cry because one of the Chinese scientists had done this germline editing, and it did this germline editing into a zygote, and it introduced this gene which made it HIV free. Now it may seem like a very noble idea, but again remember the germline editing hai, that can lead to what we call designer babies, that we are now experimenting on what type of baby we want. That maybe you want a baby which is very muscular, has blonde hair, blue eyes, something like that, if you can do that. So that is why this raises lot of this concern, what we call eugenics, where we are literally designing babies with greater quality, playing with nature. So that is also a serious fear associated with gene editing. In fact, when this happened in 2014, I remember Emmanuel Charpentier made a global appeal that we need to take a pause on CRISPR-Cas9, the person who actually discovered it, that we need to take a pause and we have to answer certain questions, because without those questions, otherwise it can lead to disaster also. So in any case, so guided RNA, Cas9 and a particular part of DNA, that can be challenges, ethical challenges, designer babies, fear वाला जो part है, benefits बहुत सारे हैं. जो CRISPR-Cas9 का जो सबसे बेहतर, जो सबसे बढ़िया benefit यही है that it can actually develop genetically modified crops with much more precision. So rather than doing gene editing into human beings, let's use it for plants. That in fact can be perhaps better for overall humanity. And second thing, it also has lot of benefit in taking care of genetic disorders. Lot of genetic disorders can be rectified with the help of CRISPR-Cas9 technique. Many researchers are already working on it. For example, on sickle cell anemia and many other such genetic disorders, CRISPR-Cas9 has given very good result. So in that sense, this topic is important. The government does allow it because it has also a lot of benefits. So the apprehensions hai, these apprehensions are associated with safety, fear that if there is any type of mistake, then that mistake what it will lead to, that there is a lot of fear around it. First. Second, there is a fear of what we call designer baby. So that is why regulation is the way forward rather than complete ban on the technology, because complete ban does not make sense, right? So this technology actually is quite helpful in getting rid of genetic disorders, overall developing our understanding about how our gene work, because believe me, even though we have some idea about genetics, but we do not know everything. We can, in fact, we do not know a lot of things. And the CRISPR-Cas9 that can be very helpful in understanding of how biology works at the level of RNA and DNA. So ये भी एक बढ़िया एक application हो सकता है. Genetically modified crop एक बढ़िया application हो सकता है. Again, that also has to be done in proper regulatory manner. So there are a lot of benefits. There are concerns also. So wherever this happens, regulation is always the way forward rather than complete ban on things. As of now, ऐसा कुछ है नहीं. Lot of this fear which I am talking about, lot of this fear is possible fear. We haven't witnessed, जैसे जो Chinese scientist वाला भी जो case था, that was again that once you start doing something like that he was doing germline editing to develop a baby which cannot be infected by HIV virus. even though on principle you may think that chalo it looks like a noble idea, but nonetheless then there is a slippery slope. You are going into what we call this entire concept of designer baby. So that is why there was so much hue and cry, and that is why germline editing is banned, but CRISPR-Cas9 for GM crop or for genetic disorders, that is not banned, including into India. But nonetheless in India, any type of gene therapy, any type of gene editing, it actually goes through lot of tough regulation. जो इंडिया में regulations हैं वो काफ़ी tough हैं. वो दूसरी बात है कि ठीक से implement नहीं होते. Anyways, next topic is CAR-T therapy. Now CAR-T therapy, first thing first, we are talking about this for cancer treatment. So what exactly is CAR-T therapy? इसको भी समझ लेते हैं. So in cancer, for example, when a tumor has grown inside body, then your body defense mechanism जो हमारा जो immune system है, that is not able to destroy that tumor. That is why there is a cancerous growth. Simple. If you do not tackle that cancerous growth, it can spread to different part of the body and it can escalate the entire death process. So cancer, that is why is such a dangerous disease. But our body does not know how to fight with this infection. तो हमारा जो बॉडी का इम्यून सिस्टम है फ्रैंकली वो बहुत कॉम्प्लेक्स है, बहुत अमेजिंग भी है. हमारा जो बॉडी का इम्यून सिस्टम है दैट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम इवन आवर स्किन डज नॉट अलाउ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स टू एंटर. देयर आर पोर्स, nasal pore or eyes from where viruses or bacteria can enter. But even our body's immune system starts from skin. Then you have cellular membrane. That cellular membrane which is made of lipid, that will not allow lot of pathogens to enter. It will not allow it to hijack cellular machinery. But some pathogens still can infect body. Then body का जो एक हम बोलते हैं एक general immune system kicks in. That it will adopt a general approach. For example, आपको fever हो जाएगा. It is going to increase the temperature of body. Fever के कारण क्या होता है कि lot of pathogens cannot survive at very high temperature. So this such type of response, it is called inflammatory response. But nonetheless, that inflammatory response can also be problematic for you. That मान लो 100-101 fever तो चलो फिर भी ठीक है. But if that inflammatory response goes up to 100-405, तो pathogen मारने के चक्कर में बाकी के functions आपके खत्म हो रहे हैं. So that is why taking this medicine so that आपका fever control हो वो बड़ा ज़रूरी हो जाता है. So nonetheless, body adopts what we call this general approach, that for all type of pathogens, it will adopt a general approach. Despite that, there will be certain pathogens which will not be able to die, which will not be able to, body will not be able to control them. Then our specific immune system kicks in. And जो specific immune system है उसका जो सबसे integral part है, वो दो बहुत important cells which are called B cells and T cells, which is given here. These are lymphocyte cells produced in bone marrow, part of our WBC. So B cells and T cells, they are now proper immune system. These B cells and T cells actually lead to production of what we call antibodies. पहले जो हमारा B cell immune system है, that is going to produce some antibodies, and उसका जो response mechanism होगा वो थोड़े time तक रहेगा. But then after some time T cell response mechanism will kick in, and that will have a much long lasting impact. Body is going to remember what type of pathogen, depending upon the type of pathogen, what type of antibody has to be produced. So B cell and T cells are very integral part of your what we call specific immune system, that depending upon the type of pathogen, the type of antibody is going to be different. Compared to other immune system, compared to this general approach which body adopts, that inflammation, increasing the temperature of the body, which can in fact of course lead to lot of infection जो है वो automatically आपका हो जाएगा. जैसे मान लो आपको वायरल सिंपल सा हो रखा है, 4-5 दिन फीवर होगा. फीवर अगर आपने ठीक है, फॉर एग्जांपल इवन इफ यू डू नॉट टेक मेडिसिन एज लॉन्ग एज इट इज कंट्रोल्ड 100-101, ठीक है, यू विल नॉट फंक्शन प्रॉपर्ली बट यू विल गेट क्योर्ड ऑल्सो. But if that also does not work, then this specific immune system kicks in, where body starts producing specific antibodies depending upon what type of pathogen we are talking about. So that is the job of B cell and T cell. T cell has a long lasting response. In cancer, your body does not know how to fight cancerous cell. So what we do here is, in CAR-T therapy, we use what we call chimeric antigen receptor. You take blood, from this blood you remove T cells, and now those T cells are modified into lab. You train them. That modification can take lot of different approaches. One approach can be gene editing also, but does not have to be gene editing. But those T cells are modified, they are trained that how they can fight even cancerous infection. That modification, that introduction, we call it introduction of chimeric antigen receptor. So chimeric antigen receptor, you can assume that it includes lot of things, not one molecule but lot of things. And now T cell, अब ऐसे कि imagine कर लो एक छोटा बच्चा है जो स्कूल में bully होता है हर दिन, but then you teach that छोटा बच्चा कराटे और वो फिर जाके अपने bullies को हरा के आ जाएगा. So something like that, that T cell will be properly trained with, and this training part which under the change this T cell goes, that is called chimeric antigen receptor T, or T cell, simply I can call it CAR T. And this CAR T now will be multiplied into lab itself. We will make millions of CAR T cells, and then again we will inject back that into body. Now T cells know how to fight this cancerous cell. Initially it did not, but now with this new knowledge, with this new training, it can fight this cancerous infection and it can actually get rid of the cancerous cell. This tool, ऐसा नहीं है कि proper well established cancer treatment बन चुका है. In many countries, in US also for example, US has taken lot of lead here. They have been doing CAR T therapy for quite some time now, and for certain type of cancer this is becoming more and more popular. Now why this topic is in news? Because first time developed by IIT Bombay and Tata Memorial Center. Tata Memorial Center is a very famous cancer hospital in Bombay. So they have actually tested this CAR T therapy on patients in India. Right, so that is why this topic is in news. So CAR T therapy, simply, if I have to talk about in few lines, we are talking about T cells, which by the way do not know how to fight off this cancerous growth, and T cells, by the way, which are integral part of our immune system. You remove T cells of body, first remove blood, isolate T cells, train them. This training adding many type of molecules, we call it chimeric antigen receptor. And now you make millions of that copy, inject back into blood, and now these trained T cells know how to fight off infection. So CAR T therapy, and this method is called CAR T therapy, which has lot of applications into cancer treatment. But again I will repeat, this still is into earlier stages of proper cancer treatment. The cancer treatment protocol hai, they still follow similar simple protocols, like not simple frankly, but standard protocol जो यही है कि हम पहले हम रेडिएशन थेरेपी बाद में करेंगे, पहले हम कीमोथेरेपी करेंगे, सर्जरी करेंगे, रेडिएशन थेरेपी करेंगे. तो इन सारे जो भी मेथड्स है, they are very expensive, there are a lot of side effects also. Compared to that, अगर CAR T therapy properly एक well established method अगर हो जाए, तो it will have very less side effect, and in fact it can fight off cancerous infection in a much better way. So that is why this topic is in news. Genome sequencing, as I told you, so gene editing was alteration of DNA. Genome sequencing is just finding this complete structure of base pair. That a complete genome अगर आप लिखोगे तो अच्छा खासा पूरा book आप भर दोगे. A book of many thousand pages you can fill that with this structure. But ये जो structure है, that how these base pairs are arranged, that actually can tell you a lot about many things. For example, it can tell you about genetic traits and how different genetic traits lead to different type of properties. It can tell you susceptibility to certain type of diseases. It can also help understanding questions of evolutionary biology, for example, how even within human beings, how we are related to each other, or how human beings as a species are related to other species. So how species have evolved, it can answer those questions also. So it has applications into many areas. Medical science is just one of them, but it has applications into research, designing personalized medicine. एक बहुत famous concept जो है जिसको हम बोलते हैं personalized medicine, that certain people require a dedicated approach for treatment because of their increased susceptibility to a certain type of disease. So understanding of why this susceptibility is there can actually help in designing personalized medicine, and for that genome sequencing is very important. Now why? Of course, so vaccine, how, ये भी हम discuss करेंगे इस पे, vaccine, how in vaccine manufacturing, how this can be helpful. सॉरी, जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग एक बड़ा कॉन्सेप्ट है. जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग कैन अडॉप्ट डिफरेंट स्ट्रैटेजीज. जैसे एक हम बोलते हैं होल जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग, ज़्यादा मुश्किल है. फिर हम टारगेटेड जीन सीक्वेंसिंग करते हैं. सो दैट कैन बी एन एग्जांपल ऑफ जीन मैपिंग, कि हम एक पर्टिकुलर लोकस का हम सीक्वेंसिंग करेंगे. बट इवन टारगेटिंग सीक्वेंसिंग जो है, दैट ऑल्सो टेल्स यू लॉट ऑफ इन्फॉर्मेशन. बट होल जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग ऑफ कोर्स विल गिव यू लॉट मोर इन्फॉर्मेशन. नाउ व्हाई दिस टॉपिक इज इन न्यूज? बिकॉज अभी तक जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग ऐसा नहीं कि कुछ नया है. There was a very famous project in 1990 called Human Genome Project, which did genome sequencing of many human beings across the planet. But जो भी अभी तक जो genome sequencing हुए हैं, all of them have actually not been, they were not able to do complete genome sequencing. Genome sequencing करना बहुत मुश्किल है. You require lot of tools, powerful computers. But now some researchers have found a way that some part of DNA which till now was not sequenced, now even that has been sequenced, and that is why this topic is in news. So the reason is very simple, that about 90-92% of the genome sequencing had been done for human beings. Some 7-8% that was left, and it was left because it was very difficult. Why it was difficult, we do not have to go into this detail, but it was very difficult. But now some scientists have found this tool, that how we can do genome sequencing of that left part also, and that is why this topic is in news. So it can have, and as I told you, finally it is about finding this base pair, adenine, cytosine, guanine and thymine, and it can have applications into evolution, biology, and even this last one. So lot of diseases, personalized medicine, ये तो है ही. जो last one है genome sequencing, अभी तो ये टॉपिक न्यूज़ में इसलिए बिकॉज वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट जीनोम सीक्वेंसिंग ऑफ ह्यूमन बींग्स. बट थिंक अबाउट एन एपिडेमिक और अ पैंडेमिक फॉर दैट मैटर. जैसे हम हमेशा न्यूज़ पढ़ते रहते हैं आफ्टर एवरी फ्यू मंथ, हम अब तो आदत हो गई है पढ़ने की, कि सम न्यू वेरिएंट ऑफ कोरोना वायरस हैज इमर्ज्ड, राइट. सो ये जो न्यू वेरिएंट है, इट सिंपली मीन्स दैट जो कोरोना वायरस है, दैट इज एन आरएनए वायरस. व्हेन आरएनए वायरसेस मल्टीप्लाई, there will be lot of errors into their multiplication. Even when DNA copies itself, there can be some error, but जो DNA when it copies itself, the error is very very less. तो जो भी जो DNA viruses होंगे वहाँ पे म्यूटेशन कम होगा, बट जहाँ पे भी वायरस अगर RNA वायरस होगा, वो जब डिवाइड करेंगे, in the process of division there will be lot of error. Those errors are introducing new type of mutations. If a particular mutation makes a virus more smart in the sense that it can outwit body's immune system, it is more transmissible, or it can, despite the fact that I am vaccinated and still I can get infected. So all of those things, those viruses are going to increase into significant number. So genome sequencing is very important even at the level of microbial organism, to understand how different strains of a particular virus or a particular bacteria is emerging, and what type of threat you are going to witness because of this different type of strains. So as of now, जो government of India है, as of now we have this genome surveillance program, and in this genome surveillance program you have this many labs where we are basically continuously analyzing जो भी आप sample, आपसे sample आपने collect किया, and WHO का मान लो कोई report आया कि there is a threat of a particular strain, तो the moment कुछ samples हम हमेशा analyze करते रहेंगे कि the same strain is it also found in India, right. तो ये, और ये सिर्फ इंडिया नहीं करेगी, ये हर कंट्री करेगी, एंड जो भी इंफॉर्मेशन आएगा देन country is going to share that information at the global platform to WHO, so that WHO can warn other countries also about it. So such type of genomic surveillance is going to be very very important if you want to tackle pandemic. It also helps you in making vaccines, because vaccines में हम body को क्या कर रहे हैं, train कर रहे हैं against a possible infection. If you understand the genetic structure of a particular virus, then you can understand that how viruses are mutating, and vaccine आपका कितना effective होगा या कितना effective नहीं होगा, right. तो even for vaccine development it is going to be very important. There is a small topic given here, IndiGen project. This IndiGen project was undertaken by Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, where it aims to undertake whole genome sequencing of about 1,000 Indian individuals representing diverse ethnic group. So the goal here is to understand how Indians are related to each other, to understand if a particular group is susceptible to certain type of diseases, something like that. तो अभी 1000 है, but CSIR actually plans to increase the number in future, that let's make it 10,000 also. But as of now, a project of CSIR where we are going to do 1000 genome sequencing of 1000 Indian individuals, and it makes actually a lot of sense because जो human genome project था, which was completed in 2003, that there was no Indian here. Many people, genome sequencing of many people occurred, but कोई भी Indian उसमें नहीं था. There is another similar project of Department of Biotechnology where basically they are collecting genetic samples and they are preparing a reference genome कि overall जो Indians का genome होगा वो कैसा होगा, what type of genetic structure we are talking about. Gene editing तो सबसे पहले बहुत ही different है. When I talk about gene editing, then I'm talking about alteration or perhaps changing a particular part of DNA. Maybe we are just removing some of these strands, some of the pairs, and letting body repair itself, or maybe we are introducing a synthetic gene, जो अभी थोड़ी देर पहले मैं discuss कर रहा था. तो gene editing is very different. When I'm using the word gene sequencing, the goal of gene sequencing is that we are trying to find this correct pattern of the base pair. Simple. Gene sequencing can adopt lot of approaches. One approach which is most complicated, most expensive, is called whole genome sequencing. That पूरा का पूरा genome sequencing करना. Or it can also do what we call targeted genome sequencing, that understanding a particular locus of DNA. तो जो targeted genome sequencing है, that will adopt this strategy of what we call gene mapping. ठीक है? तो whole genome sequencing is a much larger word. Gene mapping can be one of the approaches to do this, जो पूरा genome sequencing है उसको समझने के लिए. हम जरूरी नहीं है रिप्लेस ही कर रहे हो, हम खाली डिलीट भी कर सकते हैं. तो जरूरी नहीं कि हम ऐड कर रहे हैं. जैसे मैंने क्या बोला, SDN1, 2, 3 जो मैंने बताया था, वी कैन रिमूव पार्ट ऑफ DNA, वी कैन रिमूव सर्टेन बेस पेयर, let body repair itself, we can do that also, or we can also of course add something. So जरूरी नहीं कि हम replace कर ही रहे हैं, ये जरूरी नहीं है. Sorry, dark genome, if I am not mistaken, this is actually part of the gene which scientists actually did not have very good understanding of. So a part of genome which we did not have very good understanding of, that where it emerges from, and that, although I have to be like, I have to go and refresh my definition, but as far as I remember, I will have to recollect this exactly what it means, but as far as I remember, we are talking about part of genome where we had very less understanding. Some mutated genes which we do not know that how it actually came into existence. ये इसका जो reason है वो क्यों है. तो that is I think called dark genome. हाँ, केमोथेरेपी तो बहुत लंबा प्रोसेस है ना. जो कीमोथेरेपी है, कीमोथेरेपी इज बहुत सारे मेडिसिन, बहुत सारी चीज़ें, ट्रीटमेंट एक साथ चलता है जिसका बड़ा साइड इफेक्ट होता है, चलते रहता है. ऐसा भी नहीं कि एक बार आज होगा कल होगा, बहुत लंबा चलेगा. बहुत सारे आपने देखा होगा कैंसर पेशेंट्स के बाल वगैरह झड़ जाएंगे, कंटिन्यूसली नॉजिएटिंग फील होगा. तो पूरा प्रोसेस है. जो कार्टी थेरेपी में क्या होगा कि वंस योर बॉडी, वंस टी सेल्स आर ट्रेन्ड दैट दे कैन fight the cancerous cell, तो फिर तो they are trained ना, they can fight this cancerous cell and you can ये बार बार करने की हमको जरूरत नहीं है. ठीक है, unless we are talking about entirely different cancer. So in that sense, for example, maybe it will require another therapy, but for one type of cancer we just have to actually use. हाँ, so for a particular type of cancer we can use CAR-T therapy and बार बार करने की जरूरत नहीं है, because यहाँ पे CAR-T therapy में हम क्या कर रहे हैं, बॉडी के इंटरनल जो हमारा इम्यून सिस्टम है उसको हम यूज कर रहे हैं कि दिस इंटरनल इम्यून सिस्टम कैन फाइट ऑफ कैंसरस सेल. No, they are not at all. Proton beam therapy is a completely different technique which uses some aspects of nuclear technology. Chemotherapy is application of lot of पूरा एक प्रोटोकॉल ही है that what type of things need to be introduced, many things simultaneously. But chemotherapy is nothing, it has nothing to do with such applications of nuclear technology. When we talk about radiation therapy, external beam therapy or proton beam therapy, then we are actually using high energy beam. For example, in external beam therapy, we are using gamma rays to destroy. जैसे कैंसर में क्या होता है कि whatever सर्जरी हो जाए, सर्जरी के बाद भी कुछ कुछ ट्रेसेस रह जाएंगे, तो उन ट्रेसेस को ख़त्म करने के लिए we can use what we call external beam therapy. In external beam therapy, we basically use gamma rays. In proton beam therapy, gamma rays however can also damage lot of your healthy cells. Compared to that, जो proton beam therapy है, we are going to use a beam of proton to destroy a particular type of tumor, but उसका जो side effect है बहुत कम होता है. But that beam of proton has been produced with the help of a nuclear reaction. So these are applications of nuclear technology. That nuclear technology can have applications into cancer treatment. So chemotherapy and proton beam therapy, they are not same. Proton beam therapy is a type of radiation therapy, but a typical radiation therapy in cancer involves gamma. In case of proton beam, literally it is proton beam therapy. It can be, but again, we need to do more trials. We need to do many such things, how effective it can be, can cancer return back. In that sense, yes, definitely. The question is asking if the statement is that जो typical radiation beam therapy है, that destroys lot of healthy cells also. In that sense, can CAR-T be considered more effective? Yes, it can be, right? So it is because हमारे जो T cells हैं, until unless there is some sort of autoimmune disorder, by the way वो भी होता है, autoimmune disorder में body खुद के ही part को antigen समझ के destroy करने. So until unless it is not leading to autoimmune disorder, it can be very effective tool, right? Cloning, this is also a very favorite topic of UPSC. When we talk about cloning, it simply means that we are talking about exact genetic replica of an organism. तो exact genetic replica produce करने का तरीका क्या है? तो जो सबसे famous और सबसे popular तरीका है, that आप this technology is called somatic cell nuclear transfer technology, जो आपका दे रखा है यहाँ पे. The most famous method to develop a clone is this technology called somatic cell nuclear transfer. As the name suggests, नाम में पूरा definition है, somatic cell nuclear transfer. So what we are doing here is that let's say for example we have to create a clone of a particular organism. जैसे बहुत जो सबसे पहला clone था वो Dolly करके एक ship थी, तो that is why this picture of ship is given here. So you take a somatic cell. Somatic cell simply means we are talking about non-sexual cell. So it does not have to be sperm or egg cell. Any cell from any part of the body which has all the pairs of chromosomes. Just for example, if I have to create a human clone, then I have to take any cell which has the 23 pair of chromosome. However, जो sperm egg cells होंगे, they will only have 23 of them, not pair, only 23 of them. So in cloning, what we do, we take a somatic cell, which is basically any type of non-sexual cell, and that somatic cell has all of this information about my genes, और इसका हमको exact अब replica तैयार करना है. अब उस replica को हम कैसे तैयार करेंगे? We can take egg cell from, we can take another egg cell. Egg cell has a nucleus, and that nucleus has 23, for example, if it is human clone, then it has 23 chromosome. Remove that nucleus. तो आपने nucleus को remove कर दिया and replace that nucleus with now the DNA extracted from the somatic cell. Now you have basically you have a cell which basically has this all of this information of DNA from this species which I wanted a clone of. Now I can adopt different approaches. One approach can be कि ये जो egg है, this egg now can be, for example, it can properly, एक जो normal fertilization process है, it can go to a sheep, and that sheep जो भी produce करेगा वो exact replica होगा इस हमारे original sheep A का. That what I have done here is that the egg cell of that sheep B, we removed the nucleus, and that nucleus was replaced with nucleus of this somatic cell. And now we are going to again keep that egg back as part of normal fertilization, and that egg is going to now create a replica of this sheep A. So this technology is called somatic cell nuclear transfer technology. But scientists now also can make many more copies. A very famous method of making many genetic ideal copies will be with the help of bacteria and viruses. That आप क्या करो, bacterial DNA का part जो भी आपने DNA extract करा है, use that extracted DNA part of some bacteria and bacterias quickly multiply themselves. तो जितना ज़्यादा multiply करेंगे उतने ज़्यादा copies produce होंगे. Or you can also use a viral DNA, that a virus again make this modification for a virus, and virus allow that virus to infect a host, and as this virus multiplies it is going to make all of these copies of that particular DNA. So वो तो smaller cell पे अगर आपको smaller clone of DNA अगर आपको चाहिए तो you can do that with the help of a bacteria or a virus. But if you want to develop a proper species, a clone species itself, then you can use this technology called somatic cell nuclear transfer technology. Why this topic is in news? Because China had successfully cloned a Arctic wolf for the first time in the world. Arctic wolf which has become extinct as of now. So they have wild Arctic wolf, उसका उन्होंने क्लोन तैयार करा है. आज बहुत सारे प्रोडक्ट चल रहे हैं पूरी दुनिया में, that lot of species which have become extinct, let's try to reintroduce them. जैसे मैमथ को लेके एक प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है जो एलिफेंट का एंसेस्टर मैमथ था, that some scientists are actually trying to create a clone of, or not exactly clone, but a replica of mammoth, and for that they are going to use egg cell of an elephant, will take the nucleus of जो भी हमको preserved fossil मिलता है, we have recovered the DNA from that preserved fossil, remove the eggs, remove the nucleus of egg cell of a elephant, then add this DNA, allow that egg to be fertilized, and you can have perhaps, for example, a mammoth baby. So this is also a plan. Jurassic Park जैसा idea लग रहा है, right? I hope you ऐसा problem भी ना हो, but some certain ideas, I'm not very sure that why this is required, frankly, but some scientists are actually working in this regard. There is another type of cloning which is called, तो जो पहला मैंने cloning बताया, gene cloning, where we can actually use self-replicating genetic elements such as bacteria or virus also, we can do that. Therapeutic cloning simply means that we can make it for stem cells, a type of stem cells. जो stem cells हैं, they are very useful because when stem cells divide, they can make any other cell also. जैसे कोई भी जो normal embryo होगा, embryo does not have all the body organs. Embryo has not well developed organ. What it has is what we call stem cells. Now when stem cells divide, जो हमारे body का जो normal cell है, when they divide, they basically only divide into a specialized cell. For example, जो lung cell है, जब वो divide होगा तो lung cell ही बनाएगा, जो heart cell है वो heart cell ही बनाएगा. लेकिन जो stem cells हैं, they have this benefit that when they divide, they can become either a stem cell or they can become a specialized cell. So stem cells are like raw material for our cellular formation. Embryos have lot of stem cells, and those stem cells are very useful. As embryo grows, it develops all of these organs, right? So the stem cell research, that is very popular because with the help of stem cell we can use it for many type of diseases, some severe burn, somebody has undergone some significant accidents, or even for blood cancer, lot of cancer diseases, people are using stem cell treatment. But where to recover, where to get stem cell from? So stem cell का जो source है, जैसे when once you become adults, then our body has very limited stem cell. We have some stem cell, ऐसा नहीं कि बिल्कुल ही नहीं है. We have some stem cells in our bone marrow, but these stem cells can only divide into some specialized blood cells. So we have very limited stem cell. So we can take these stem cells and we can modify them into lab so that we can increase their what we call potency. Potency simply means that how many number of cells they can divide. So जो adult stem cells हैं, they are called multipotent, that they can divide into few of the cells. But this multipotent stem cell can be modified into lab and we can produce what we call induced pluripotent stem cell. So induced pluripotent stem cell, that can be also quite useful for therapy. यहाँ पे कोई problem नहीं है, कोई debate नहीं है. Debate emerges in what we call embryonic stem cell. That because embryos have stem cells, then let's develop embryos and destroy those embryos and recover the stem cell. Now that generates lot of ethical question. because you are playing with human life. That आप embryonic stem cell को destroy करके, many researchers think that the benefits outweigh the ethical concern, because the benefits हैं we can actually cure a lot of diseases with very less side effect, and if you have consent from father and mother that embryo can be destroyed to develop a stem cell, then what is the concern then? But nonetheless, despite it, many countries ban it, including India. The embryonic stem cell research hai, that is not allowed in India. So in cloning, when we talk about therapeutic cloning, then we can talk about cloning till the production of embryo. We are talking about mainly our purpose of therapeutic cloning will be that we are talking about development of clone of stem cells, and those stem cells can be quite useful for various type of treatment. This topic is a very simple topic. A biological data center has been inaugurated in Faridabad, Haryana. This is a very powerful supercomputer called Brahm. Why this biological data center? The reason is very simple. Government of India funds lot of research. There are a lot of publicly funded research in the field of biotechnology. There is research in pharma sector, in medical sector, overall understanding of genetics across so many institutes, so many labs, so many hospitals. And often it has found out that we do not have one repository of all this biological data, because biological data can be very useful for developing new type of medicine, new type of therapies, overall understanding of medical science, vaccine development. So, and government is funding lot of this research here and there. मान लो one group of researcher wants access to particular data, does not even know that where he can get data from, because biological data is not easily available. तो वो क्या होगा कि उस डेटा के लिए एक अलग से रिसर्च होगा, जो कि डिप्लीकेशन ऑफ एफर्ट है, जो कोई और ऑलरेडी इंडिया में कर रहा है, बट जस्ट बिकॉज यू डू नॉट हैव एक्सेस टू डेटा, तो आप खुद से अलग से आप कर रहे हो रिसर्च. सो टू ओवरकम ऑल दिस लिमिटेशन, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया डिसाइडेड that first let's make a guideline that how biological data will be shared among all the institutes, among all the important stakeholders. Those guidelines are called Biotech Pride Guidelines. It is released by Department of Biotechnology. The goal here is that biological data sharing mechanism, हम यहाँ पे दो sharing mechanism होगा. एक biological data ऐसा होगा जो कि overall सबके पास available होगा. एक type of biological data which can be considered sensitive data. That access is going to be very much restricted. So we are going to divide biological data into two parts. One which can be archived, can be accessed without much problem, but the second type of biological data that will require some sort of permission. And to implement these guidelines, तो biotech pride guidelines तो तब matter करेंगे ना कि हमारे पास एक proper repository of biological data है. तो repository of biological data के लिए government has basically this biological data center with the help of a very powerful supercomputer called Brahm that has been started by Department of Biotechnology. So simply few things in prelims examination, few things you have to know. Biotech pride guidelines, what do I mean by that? And ये जो biological data center है उसका exactly significance क्या है? बाकी छोटे छोटे जो टॉपिक्स हैं हम अगले क्लास में करेंगे. सो नेक्स्ट क्लास में विल डिस्कस, वी विल फिनिश दिस. देयर आर सम स्मॉल टॉपिक्स ऑफ बायोटेक्नोलॉजी. वी विल आल्सो फिनिश हेल्थ, बट आई विल एक्सपेक्ट जो हेल्थ में जो पूरा डिजीज वाला सेक्शन है, जो पूरा टेबल है, इन डिजीज सेक्शन यू ओनली हैव टू नो टू थिंग्स. फर्स्ट इज इफ देयर इज एनी पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ पैथोजन, viral disease or bacterial disease, you have to know. And if there is any particular type of very specific symptom of a particular disease, you should know that. जैसे there is a vaccine for HPV, आपके मटेरियल में दे रखा है, which causes cervical cancer. Now that is a very specific symptom. If the symptom is simple normal symptoms, then you do not have to remember. But if there is a disease जिसका बहुत particular symptom है, वो आपको पता होना चाहिए. And अगर कोई नया वैक्सीन डेवलप हुआ है तो वो पता होना चाहिए. So just know three things. What is the pathogen, and if that pathogen is carried by some vector. For example, there are a lot of diseases which are carried by vectors such as mosquitoes. So you have to also know that vector. जैसे काला जर का जो वेक्टर है वो सैंड फ्लाई है, और जो मलेरिया है उसका जो वेक्टर है वो एनोफिलिस है, फीमेल एनोफिलिस मॉस्किटो है. सो जो भी पर्टिकुलर डिजीज का पैथोजन कुछ और है, बट जो वेक्टर है वो भी पता होना चाहिए. अगर बहुत स्पेसिफिक सिम्टम है, यू शुड नो दैट. एंड एनी टाइप ऑफ वेरी स्पेसिफिक ट्रीटमेंट और वैक्सीन विच वॉज इन न्यूज बिकॉज इट इज अ न्यू टाइप ऑफ ट्रीटमेंट, देन यू शुड नो दैट. जैसे मलेरिया के लिए पहली बार वैक्सीन इंट्रोड्यूस हुआ है, तो यू शुड नो दैट. तो सारे डिजीजेस जानने की जरूरत नहीं है, जो बहुत प्रोमिनेंट नेम है, प्रोमिनेंटली न्यूज़पेपर में कवर्ड है, हम खाली उस पर फोकस करेंगे. ठीक है. सो नेक्स्ट क्लास विल कंप्लीट हेल्थ ऑल्सो, एंड वी विल स्टार्ट आवर नेक्स्ट टॉपिक विच इज डिफेंस टेक्नोलॉजी.